Once upon a time, high in the mist-covered mountains, there stood an ancient temple, its wooden eaves weathered by centuries of wind and rain, tucked away from the clamor of the world below. It was a place where weary souls came to seek solace, where the air carried the faint scent of pine and the distant chime of a temple bell. Each night, when the full moon cast its silver glow over the valley, the temple's master, a wise old Zen monk, would sit with his disciples and travelers alike, sharing stories that stirred the heart and quieted the mind. Tonight, as the moon hung low and luminous, a group of travelers arrived at the temple gates. Their footsteps echoed softly on the stone path, their faces etched with the weight of their journeys, some burdened by regret, others by worry, all seeking something they could not name. The monk greeted them with a gentle smile, his eyes twinkling like stars reflected in a still pond. He invited them to rest on the temple's wooden porch, where cushions were laid out beneath the open sky. The night was cool, the breeze carrying whispers of cedar and earth. "Make yourselves comfortable," the monk said, his voice as soft as the rustle of leaves. "Adjust your position, let your body settle, and take a deep breath with me now. Inhale and exhale. Feel the weight of the day begin to lift, like mist rising from a river at dawn. You've come here, perhaps without knowing why, but the stories we share tonight have been waiting for you, as they have waited for countless others before." The travelers sat, their shoulders loosening as the monk's words wove a spell of calm. The moon's light bathed the temple in a gentle glow, and the distant sound of a stream trickling over rocks mingled with the hum of crickets. The monk folded his hands in his lap, his robes pooling around him like shadows. "These stories," he began, "are not mere tales. They are keys to unlock the peace that already lives within you. The Buddha once said, 'Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without.' In the hours ahead, we will journey through tales of wisdom, stories of broken jars, drifting boats, and fleeting moonlight. Each one holds a truth to guide you toward rest, not just of the body, but of the soul." He paused, letting the silence settle, as if inviting the night itself to listen. "Long ago," he continued, "this temple was a beacon for those lost in the storms of their own minds. Every full moon, people would climb these mountains, drawn by the promise of clarity. They came with questions, with doubts, with hearts heavy as stone. And each night, they left lighter, their burdens softened by the stories they heard. Tonight, you are those travelers. Whatever brought you here, whether a restless mind, a heavy heart, or simple curiosity, know that you are exactly where you need to be." The monk's voice grew softer, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of timeless truth. "As we begin, let your thoughts drift like clouds across the moon. There is no need to chase them or hold them. Just listen. Let the stories wrap around you like a warm blanket. Picture the temple around us, the wooden beams carved with ancient prayers, the flicker of lanterns casting shadows on the walls. Feel the cool night air on your skin, the rhythm of your breath slowing, deepening. With each word, you are stepping closer to a place of stillness, a place where worries dissolve and peace rises naturally, like the moon climbing the sky." One of the travelers, a young woman with tired eyes, shifted on her cushion, her hands unclenching as the monk spoke. Another, an older man with a furrowed brow, let out a quiet sigh, his shoulders sinking. The monk noticed, his smile deepening. "These stories are not new," he said. "They have been told for centuries, passed from master to disciple, from heart to heart. Yet each time they are shared, they are born anew, shaped by the ears that hear them. Tonight, they are for you. They will meet you where you are, whether your mind races like a river or lingers like a still lake." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze sweeping over the group. "One night, long ago, a group much like you came to this temple. They were merchants, farmers, wanderers, each carrying their own struggles. They sat where you sit now, under this same moon. They thought peace was something to be found out there, in wealth, in answers, in a different life. But as the night unfolded, they discovered something else. Peace was not a destination. It was a way of seeing, a way of being. The stories I shared with them helped them see the world with fresh eyes, and they left this temple not with answers, but with a quiet heart." The monk's words seemed to ripple through the air, mingling with the soft chime of the temple bell in the distance. "So let us begin," he said, with the first story, a tale of a man who carried water in a jar that was not whole. As you listen, let your body grow heavy, your breath soft and steady. There's nothing you need to do but be here, now, in this moment. The moon is watching, the night is listening, and your heart is ready to receive. The travelers closed their eyes, some fully, others halfway, as the monk's voice carried them into the story. The temple seemed to fade, replaced by the image of a dusty path, a man with a wooden yoke, and a jar that leaked with every step. The moon shone brighter, the world grew quieter, and the journey into the heart of Zen began. Under the silver glow of the full moon, the old Zen monk's voice flowed like a gentle stream, weaving through the quiet temple porch where the travelers sat. Their cushions were soft beneath them, the night air cool against their skin, and the distant trickle of a mountain spring blended with the hum of crickets. The monk's eyes, bright with wisdom, settled on the group as he began the first story. His words slow and deliberate, inviting them to sink deeper into the moment. "Long ago," he said, "in a village nestled at the foot of these very mountains, there lived a man named Taro. He was a water carrier, a simple soul who spent his days walking the dusty path between the river and the village. His wooden yoke balanced across his shoulders. On each end of the yoke hung a clay jar, filled to the brim with water to quench the thirst of the villagers. Every morning, as the sun rose over the rice fields, Taro would set out, his steps steady, his heart content with the rhythm of his work. The monk paused, letting the image settle in the travelers' minds. A young woman among them, her eyes half closed, pictured the golden light of dawn, the sway of the yoke, the faint slosh of water. The monk continued. Taro's life was ordinary, much like yours or mine. He was no scholar, no warrior, just a man doing what needed to be done. But Taro had a secret sorrow, one he carried as quietly as the water in his jars. You see, one of his jars was perfect, smooth and whole, holding every drop from river to village. The other, though, was cracked. A thin fracture ran down its side, and with every step Taro took, water dripped out, leaving a trail of damp earth behind him. The older man in the group, his brow still creased from the day's worries, shifted slightly, his breath slowing as the story unfolded. The monk's voice softened. At first, Taro didn't mind the crack. He thought, "It's just a small flaw. I can still carry enough water." But as weeks turned to months, the loss began to weigh on him. By the time he reached the village, the cracked jar was half empty, while the perfect jar remained full. The villagers thanked him, but Taro's heart grew heavy. He felt he was failing them, that his work was less than it could be. Each night, as he lay on his straw mat, he wondered why he couldn't have two perfect jars, why his efforts always fell short. The monk leaned forward, his robes rustling faintly. One day, Taro's frustration became too much. He sat by the river, the cracked jar at his side, staring at the water's surface as it rippled under the breeze. "Why must I carry you?" he muttered to the jar. "You make my work harder, my load lighter than it should be. I could do so much more without you." The jar, of course, said nothing, but its silence seemed to mock him. Taro decided he would ask the village potter for a new jar, one without flaws. But he was a poor man, and the thought of the cost only deepened his despair. The travelers were still now, their breaths in rhythm with the monk's words. The moon climbed higher, casting long shadows across the temple floor. That evening, the monk went on. As Taro walked back to the village, his yoke creaking under the weight of the jars, he passed an old woman sitting by the path. She was no ordinary villager. She was known as Hana, a wise elder who had once studied with the monks in this very temple. Her eyes, sharp despite her years, followed Taro as he trudged along, the cracked jar leaving its trail of droplets in the dust. Hana called out to him, her voice clear as a bell. "Taro, why do you frown? Your water feeds the village, yet you carry the face of a man who's lost his way." Taro stopped, surprised. He set down his yoke and wiped the sweat from his brow. "It's this jar," he said, pointing to the cracked one. "It leaks. Half the water is gone before I reach the village. I'm not good enough. Not fast enough. I want to do better, but this flaw holds me back." The monk's gaze swept over the travelers, as if seeing their own hidden burdens. Hana smiled, a smile that held the warmth of a summer day. "Come with me, Taro," she said. She led him back along the path he'd just walked, the one he took every day from river to village. As they went, she pointed to the ground. "Look," she said. Taro looked down and saw something he'd never noticed before. On the side of the path, where the cracked jar hung, a ribbon of wildflowers bloomed vivid blues and yellows, their petals swaying in the evening breeze. The other side, where the perfect jar passed, was bare, just dry earth and scattered stones. The young woman's lips parted slightly, a faint smile forming as she imagined the flowers. The monk's voice grew quieter, almost a whisper. Taro stood there, stunned. "Do you see?" Hana asked. "Your cracked jar has been watering these flowers all along, while the perfect jar carries water to the village. This one brings beauty to the path. Its flaw is no failure. It's a gift. Without it, these flowers would never have grown. The village needs your water, but the world needs this beauty, too." The monk paused, letting the truth sink in. The travelers' eyes were soft now, their faces relaxed under the moonlight. Taro's heart, so heavy for so long, began to lighten. He said, he looked at the cracked jar, its rough surface glinting in the fading light. And for the first time, he saw it not as a burden, but as a partner in his work, From that day on, he walked the path with a new purpose. He still carried water to the village, but he also carried pride in the flowers that bloomed because of his cracked jar. His steps were lighter, his heart fuller, and the villagers noticed a change in him, a quiet joy that hadn't been there before. The monk leaned back, his hands resting in his lap. The Buddha once taught, everything is perfect in its imperfection. Taro's story reminds us that what we see as flaws are often the very things that bring unexpected gifts. In Zen, we learn to look deeply, to see beyond our judgments. The cracked jar didn't fail. It created something beautiful. So, too, can our own imperfections. They are not mistakes, but part of the vast tapestry of life, woven with threads of purpose we may not yet understand. He closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the story himself. Think of your own life, he said, addressing the travelers directly. What is your cracked jar, a mistake you regret? A dream that didn't unfold as planned? A part of yourself you wish were different? Can you see, even now, the flowers it might be watering, the beauty it might be bringing to the world? As you listen, let these questions drift through your mind like leaves on a stream. There's no need to answer them, just let them be, and feel your heart soften, your body relax. The temple was silent, save for the faint rustle of the breeze and the steady rhythm of the travelers' breaths. The monk's voice grew even gentler, guiding them deeper into rest. As Taro learned, peace comes not from perfection, but from acceptance. Tonight, as you lie here under the moon, let go of the need to be flawless. Picture yourself walking Taro's path, the cracked jar at your side, the wildflowers blooming in your wake. With each breath, let your worries slip away, like water seeping into the earth. You are enough, just as you are. The young woman's smile widened, her hands resting loosely in her lap. The older man's brow had smoothed, his breath deep and even. The monk nodded, almost imperceptibly, and continued. This is the gift of the cracked jar. It teaches us to see beauty in what is, not in what we wish to be. As the Buddha said, when you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. Oh, let that laughter fill your heart now, soft and quiet as you drift closer to sleep. The story settled over the travelers like a warm blanket, the image of wildflowers lingering in their minds. The monk's voice faded into a soothing hum, blending with the night sounds, the stream, the crickets, the whisper of the wind. Rest now, he murmured, and let the moon carry you into the next tale, where we will meet a traveler haunted by his own shadow. For now, breathe deeply and let the cracked jar remind you you are whole, even in your imperfections. The old Zen master's voice flowed like the mountain stream beyond the temple, its gentle cadence weaving through the cool night air. The travelers, nestled on cushions upon the wooden porch, felt the soft glow of the full moon bathing them in silver light. The scent of pine drifted in, mingling with the faint chime of a distant temple bell and the rhythmic hum of crickets. Their bodies, once tense from their journeys, now rested heavily, their breath slowing as the master's words from the tale of Taro and the cracked jar lingered in their hearts. The young woman's faint smile remained, and the older man's furrowed brow had eased, his eyes half closed in the moon's embrace. The master, his robes pooling like shadows around him, gazed at the group with quiet warmth before beginning the next story. "Long ago," he said, his voice as soft as the rustle of leaves, "in a village not far from this temple, there lived a man named Kale. He was a wanderer by nature, a seeker of truths who roamed the land with a worn cloak and a heart full of questions. Kale was no stranger to the world's wonders. He'd seen rivers carve canyons, mountains touch the stars, and forests whisper secrets older than time. Yet, for all his travels, Kale carried a burden he could not name. A shadow that followed him no matter where he went. The travelers leaned in slightly, drawn by the image of Kale's solitary figure against the vast world. The master's eyes twinkled, reflecting the moonlight. Kale's life was much like yours," he continued. "He sought peace, but his mind was restless. Each night, when the moon rose, he felt a stirring unease. You see, Kale was afraid of his shadow. Under the sun's glare, it was a faint companion, barely noticed. But in the moonlight, it grew sharp and bold, stretching long across the earth, its edges dark and defined. To Kyle, it was no mere silhouette. It was a specter, a ghost of his past, a reminder of mistakes he'd made, promises he'd broken, and dreams he'd left behind." The young woman's smile faded, her fingers tightening briefly on her cushion. The older man's breath hitched, as if Kale's fear touched something familiar. The master's voice grew softer, guiding them deeper into the tale. At first, Kale tried to ignore his shadow. He walked faster, kept his eyes fixed on the path ahead, and avoided looking back. But the shadow was always there, silent and unyielding. On moonlit nights, when its presence was strongest, Kyle's heart raced. He imagined it whispering his failures, mocking his hopes. "Why do you follow me?" he'd mutter, his voice trembling. "Leave me be." But the shadow never answered, and its silence only deepened his dread. The temple porch was still, the travelers' breaths blending with the night's quiet sounds. The moon climbed higher, its light casting delicate patterns on the wooden floor. One night, the master said, Kyle could bear it no longer. He was camped by a river, the moonlight turning the water to liquid silver. His shadow stretched across the bank, long and dark, its edges sharp as a blade. Coyle stood, his hands clenched, and shouted, "Enough, I will outrun you." He grabbed his pack and fled, running through the forest, his footsteps pounding against the earth. He darted between trees, leapt over roots, and pushed through brambles, certain he could leave the shadow behind. The young woman's eyes widened, picturing Kyle's frantic flight. The master's voice took on a gentle urgency. But no matter how fast Kale ran, the shadow kept pace. It glided over the ground, weaving through the trees, never faltering. Exhausted, Kale stumbled to a stop in a clearing, his chest heaving, his cloak torn. The shadow lay before him, as clear as ever, its form unchanged. "Why?" Kale gasped, sinking to his knees. "Why won't you let me go?" The forest was silent, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Kale buried his face in his hands, feeling more alone than ever. The master paused, letting the weight of Kale's despair settle. The travelers' faces were soft, their bodies relaxed but attentive. The next morning, he continued. Kale reached a small village at the edge of the mountains. Word of his troubled journey had spread, and an old woman named Mira, a former disciple of this temple, heard of his plight. Mira was known for her quiet wisdom, her eyes sharp with insight, her voice steady as the earth. She found Kale sitting by the village well, his head bowed, his shadow pooling at his feet in the midday sun. Mira approached, her steps light on the cobblestones. "Kale," she said, "why do you run from what walks with you?" Kale looked up, startled. "It's my shadow," he said, his voice low. "It haunts me. It's everything I've done wrong, everything I fear I'll never be. I can't escape it, no matter how far I go." Mira's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. Instead, she gestured for him to follow her. "Come," she said. "There is something you must see." The travelers' breaths were steady now, their minds carried by the story's flow. The master's voice was a soothing thread, pulling them deeper into the tale. Mira led Kale out of the village, up a winding path to a wide, open meadow high in the hills. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of gold and violet. They reached the meadow just as the full moon rose, its light spilling over the grass like a silver tide. Kyle's shadow appeared, sharp and bold, stretching across the meadow. His heart quickened, his old fear rising. "There it is," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's found me again." Mira stood beside him, her presence calm and grounding. "Kyle," she said, "look closely. What do you see?" Kyle stared at his shadow, its edges crisp in the moonlight. "It's me," he said, "but twisted, dark, wrong." Mira shook her head. "Look again," she urged. "See it not with fear, but with clear eyes." Kyle frowned, unsure, but he obeyed. He gazed at the shadow, letting his breath slow, his mind quiet. For the first time, he noticed its shape, how it mirrored his own, how it moved as he moved, how it was not separate, but part of him. The older man's eyes opened slightly, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. The master's voice grew warmer, like a hearth welcoming weary travelers. In that moment, he said, Kyle saw something new. The shadow was not a specter, not a ghost of his past. It was simply his form, cast by the moon's light, a reflection of his existence. It held no malice, no judgment. It was neither good nor bad. It simply was. Kale's fear began to dissolve, like mist under the morning sun. He turned to Mira, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's just me," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "All this time, I've been running from myself." Mira nodded, her smile gentle as the breeze. "Yes," she said, "your shadow is not your enemy. It is you, seen through the light of the world. The fears you see in it are the stories you tell yourself, stories of failure, of shame, of what might have been. But those stories are not the shadow. They are not you. They are thoughts, passing like clouds across the moon. Let them go and see what remains." The temple porch seemed to grow quieter, the travelers' breaths deepening as the master's words sank in. Kale stood in the meadow. He continued, the moonlight washing over him, his shadow steady at his feet. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. And for the first time, he didn't turn away. He didn't run. He stood with his shadow, accepting its presence, its silence, its truth. And in that acceptance, he found something he'd sought all his life: peace. Not the peace of a perfect life, but the peace of seeing clearly, of being whole. The young woman's hands rested loosely in her lap, her face serene. The master's voice was now a soft murmur, guiding the travelers toward rest. From that night on, Kyle's journeys changed. He still wandered, still sought truths, But he no longer feared his shadow. On moonlit nights, he'd pause to watch it, sometimes even smiling at its quiet company. The mistakes of his past, the fears of his future, they were still there, but they no longer ruled him. He saw them for what they were: fleeting thoughts, not the essence of who he was. The villagers noticed a change in him, a lightness in his step, a warmth in his eyes. Kale had found freedom, not by escaping his shadow, but by embracing it. The master paused, his gaze sweeping over the travelers. The moon was high now, its light soft and enveloping. The great Zen master Dogen once taught, "To study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things." Kale's story is a reminder that our fears, our regrets, our doubts, they are shadows cast by the light of our own being. They seem real, they seem powerful, but they are not us. When we stop running, when we turn and face them with clear eyes, we find that they hold no power. We find that peace is not something to chase, but something to uncover, right here, within us. He leaned back slightly, his hands folded in his lap. "Think of your own shadow," he said, his voice gentle as a lullaby. "What do you run from? A memory that stings, a fear that whispers in the night, a part of yourself you wish to hide. Can you, like Kale, stand with it under the moonlight? Can you see it not as an enemy, but as a part of your journey? As you listen, let these questions float through your mind, soft and light, like petals on a stream. There's no need to answer them. Just let them be, and feel your heart soften, your breath deepen." The travelers were still, their bodies heavy against the cushions, their minds carried by the story's quiet truth. The master's voice grew even softer, blending with the night's sounds, the trickle of the stream, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. In Zen, we learn to meet our shadows with kindness, with curiosity, with acceptance. They are not flaws to be fixed, but teachers to be heard. Kale's shadow showed him the way to peace, not by disappearing, but by being seen. So, too, can your shadows guide you, if you let them? He closed his eyes briefly, as if honoring the story's wisdom. Tonight, as you rest under this moon, picture yourself in Kale's meadow. See your shadow before you, silent and steady. Feel the cool grass beneath your feet, the moonlight on your skin, the quiet of the night wrapping around you. With each breath, let your fears slip away, like clouds passing over the moon. You are not your shadow, but you are whole with it. You are enough, just as you are. The young woman's face was calm, her breath slow and even. The older man's eyes were closed, a faint peace settling over him. The master's voice was now a whisper, a thread of comfort weaving through the night. As Kale learned, peace comes not from outrunning our shadows, but from standing with them. The Buddha taught, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." Let go of the stories you tell yourself about your shadows, and see the truth beneath you are vast. You are whole. You are free. The story settled over the travelers like a gentle tide, the image of the moonlit meadow lingering in their minds. The master's voice faded into a soothing hum, merging with the night's sounds, the stream's murmur, the cricket's song, the whisper of the breeze. "Rest now," he murmured, "and let the moon carry you into the next tale, where we will meet a village blocked by a stone that would not move." For now, breathe deeply and let Kale's shadow remind you peace is not found by running, but by standing still. The moonlight spilled over the temple porch, casting a silver glow on the travelers nestled against their cushions. The night air was cool, scented with cedar and earth, and the soft trickle of a distant stream wove through the hum of crickets and the faint chime of a temple bell. The travelers' breaths were slow and steady, their bodies relaxed after the tale of Kyle and his shadow. The young woman's face held a quiet serenity, her hands resting loosely in her lap, while the older man's eyes were closed, his once furrowed brow now smooth. The old Zen master, his robes pooling like shadows, gazed at the group with a gentle smile, his voice a soothing thread as he began the next story. Long ago, he said, his words flowing like the mountain stream in a village cradled by these hills, there lived a community bound by the rhythm of the seasons. The village was small, its houses of wood and straw clustered along a single road that wound through the valley. This road was the village's lifeline, connecting it to the market town beyond, where farmers sold their rice, weavers traded their cloth, and children ran with laughter. Each day, carts rumbled along the path, their wheels carving ruts in the earth, while travelers passed with stories of the world beyond. The travelers leaned in slightly, drawn by the image of the bustling village. The master's eyes twinkled under the moonlight. The villagers were ordinary folk, he continued, much like you and me. They worked hard, loved deeply, and faced life's joys and sorrows with courage. But one morning, as the sun rose over the hills, a great rumbling shook the valley. A massive stone, loosened by a storm, had tumbled from the cliffs above and landed squarely in the middle of the road. It was enormous, taller than a man, its surface rough and unyielding. The road was blocked, and with it, the village's connection to the world. The young woman's eyes widened, picturing the stone's imposing bulk. The master's voice grew softer, guiding the travelers deeper into the tale. At first, the villagers were undaunted. They gathered around the stone, their voices buzzing with determination. "We'll move it," said the blacksmith, his arms thick from years at the forge. "We'll break it," declared the quarryman, hefting his hammer. "We'll dig around it," suggested the farmer, his shovel in hand. They set to work, pushing, hammering, digging, their sweat mingling with the dust. But the stone did not budge. It was too heavy, too hard, too deeply embedded in the earth. The older man's breath hitched, as if he knew the weight of such obstacles. The master's voice carried a quiet urgency. Days passed, and the villagers' efforts faltered. The blacksmith's shoulders ached, the quarryman's hammer dulled, and the farmer's shovel bent. Carts could no longer pass. Trade slowed, and worry crept into the village like a shadow. The elders met in the square, their faces lined with frustration. "If we cannot move the stone," they said, "our village will wither. We need a solution." Word of their plight reached the temple on the mountain, and the villagers decided to seek the wisdom of a Zen master known for unraveling life's toughest knots. The temple porch was still, the travelers' breaths blending with the night's gentle sounds. The moon climbed higher, its light soft and enveloping. The master was an old monk named Rio. The master continued, his hair white as snow, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. He lived simply, tending the temple garden and meditating under the stars. When the villagers arrived, breathless and desperate. They poured out their story. "Master Rio," said the blacksmith, "the stone blocks our road. We've tried everything, pushing, breaking, digging, but it won't move. What can we do?" Rio listened, his face calm as a still pond, and said, "I will come and see this stone." The young woman's fingers relaxed on her cushion, her mind carried by the story's flow. The master's voice was warm, like a hearth in winter. The next morning, Rio descended the mountain, his wooden staff tapping the path. A crowd gathered as he reached the stone, its bulk casting a long shadow in the early light. The villagers watched, expecting him to summon a secret technique, perhaps a chant or a tool from the temple. But Rio did no such thing. He circled the stone slowly, his eyes tracing its jagged edges, its weathered surface, the way it sat heavy in the earth. He ran his hand along its side, feeling its coolness, its strength. Then he stopped, turned to the crowd, and asked a single question: why must the stone be moved? The older man's eyes opened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. The master's voice grew quieter, almost a whisper. The villagers were stunned. "Because it blocks the road," the blacksmith exclaimed. "It stops our carts, our trade, our lives." The farmer nodded. "We can't get to the market. The village is suffering," the quarryman added. "It's in the way. It doesn't belong here." Rio listened, his expression unchanged, and said, "The stone blocks one path, but perhaps it creates another." The villagers frowned, unsure of his meaning. But Rio's calm certainty held them silent. The travelers were attentive, their bodies heavy against the cushions, their minds open to the tale's wisdom. Rio turned to the crowd. The master said, and gestured to the land around the stone. "Look," he said, "the valley is wide, the earth is firm. Why fight the stone when you can walk with it?" He pointed to a stretch of ground beside the road, where grass grew thick and the soil was level. "Clear this space," he said. "Make a new path around the stone. Let it stand, not as an obstacle, but as a guide." The young woman's lips parted, a faint smile forming as she imagined the solution's simplicity. The master's voice took on a gentle rhythm. At first, the villagers hesitated. A new path. It seemed too easy, too strange. They'd been so focused on moving the stone, on restoring the road as it was, that they hadn't considered another way. But Rio's words stirred something in them. The blacksmith set down his hammer, the quarryman his chisel, the farmer his shovel. Together, they began to clear the ground, pulling weeds, leveling the earth, and laying stones to mark the new route. Children joined, laughing as they carried pebbles. Elders offered advice, their voices light with hope. The temple's peace wrapped around the travelers, the moonlight soft on their faces. Within days, the master continued. A new path took shape, curving gently around the great stone. It was smooth and wide, its edges lined with wildflowers that had sprung up in the disturbed soil. Carts rolled easily along it, their wheels humming a new song. Travelers passed with nods of approval, and the village came alive again. But something else happened, something unexpected. The stone, once a symbol of frustration, became a landmark. Children climbed its rough sides, giggling as they played. Elders rested in its shade, sharing stories of the valley. Visitors came from afar, drawn by tales of the stone that had reshaped a village. The older man's breath was deep and even, a quiet peace settling over him. The master's voice was now a soothing murmur, guiding the travelers toward rest. The villagers returned to Rio, their faces bright with gratitude. "Master," said the blacksmith, "you've saved our village." Rio shook his head, his smile gentle. "The stone saved your village," he said. "It showed you a new way. In Zen, we learn that obstacles are not enemies. They're teachers. When we fight them, we suffer. When we walk with them, we grow." The master paused, his gaze sweeping over the travelers. The moon was high, its light a silent witness to the story's truth. The Buddha once taught, "Do not try to change what cannot be changed. Change the way you see it, and all will be well." The stone that blocked the path was not a problem to be solved, but a guide to a new possibility. The villagers thought their road was the only way, but the stone showed them another. So, too, can the obstacles in our lives, those things we push against, those burdens we try to break, lead us to paths we never imagined? He leaned back slightly, his hands folded in his lap. "Think of your own stone," he said, his voice soft as a lullaby. "What blocks your path? A challenge you can't overcome, a goal that feels out of reach, a situation you wish were different. Can you, like the villagers, step back and see it anew? Can you ask, 'Why must this be moved?' and find a way to walk with it as you listen?" Let these questions drift through your mind, light as clouds across the moon. There's no need to answer them. Just let them be, and feel your heart soften, your breath deepen. The travelers were still, their bodies sinking into the cushions, their minds carried by the story's quiet wisdom. The master's voice blended with the night sounds, the stream's murmur, the cricket's song, the whisper of the breeze. In Zen, we learn to meet obstacles with curiosity, not resistance, he said. The stone did not move, but the village thrived because the villagers changed their way. So, too, can you find peace? Not by removing what stands in your way, but by finding a new path around it. The stone is your teacher, if you let it be. He closed his eyes briefly, as if honoring the story's lesson. Tonight, as you rest under this moon, picture yourself in the village, standing before your own stone. See its rough surface, feel its weight, its stillness. Now imagine a new path, curving gently around it, lined with flowers, leading you forward with each breath. Let your struggles slip away, like dust settling on the earth. You are not bound by the stone, you are free to walk with it. The young woman's smile returned, her face serene in the moonlight. The older man's eyes remained closed, his breath slow and steady, a faint calm radiating from him. The master's voice was now a whisper, a thread of comfort weaving through the night. As Rio taught, the stone is not your enemy, it is your guide. The Buddha said, "We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think." Let go of the thought that obstacles must be fought, and see the path they reveal. Peace is not found in victory over the stone, but in the journey it invites you to take. The story settled over the travelers like a warm tide, the image of the new path lingering in their minds. The master's voice faded into a soothing hum, merging with the night sounds, the trickle of the stream, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. "Rest now," he murmured, "and let the moon carry you into the next tale. where we will meet a boatman whose anger met an empty boat. For now, breathe deeply and let the stone remind you every obstacle is a teacher and every path leads to peace. The full moon hung like a lantern in the velvet sky, its silver light dancing across the temple porch where the travelers rested. The air was crisp, infused with the scent of wild jasmine and the faint murmur of a mountain stream weaving through the night. Crickets sang in chorus, their rhythm blending with the occasional chime of a temple bell, its echo lingering like a whispered prayer. The travelers, cushioned on soft mats, were lulled by the lingering warmth of the previous tale, the stone that became a guide. The young woman's eyes sparkled with quiet wonder, her fingers tracing idle patterns on her sleeve, while the older man's breath was deep and even, his face softened by the moon's gentle glow. The Zen master, his silhouette framed by the glow of a single lantern, sat cross-legged, his robes flowing like a still river. His voice, warm and resonant, began to weave the next story, its cadence a tender invitation to drift deeper into the night's embrace. Once, in a land kissed by rivers and cloaked in mist, he began, there lived a boatman named Jiro. He was a man of the water, his life bound to the ebb and flow of the great river that carved through the heart of his valley. Jiro's boat was his world, a sturdy vessel of cedar, polished by years of his calloused hands. Each dawn, he rowed across the river, ferrying villagers to the market, carrying merchants with their wares, and guiding pilgrims to the shrines nestled in the hills. His oars dipped into the water with a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat, and the river answered with ripples that sparkled under the sun. The traveler's eyes fluttered, drawn into the vision of Jiro's boat gliding through dawn's golden haze. The master's voice painted the scene vividly. Jiro was no ordinary boatman. He continued. He loved the river as one loves a friend. Its currents spoke to him. Its moods shaped his days. On calm mornings, he hummed old songs, his voice mingling with the water's laughter. On stormy afternoons, he navigated with a quiet resolve, his eyes sharp against the rain. The villagers revered him, for Jiro was more than a ferryman. He was the river's keeper, a man who knew its secrets and honored its spirit. The young woman's lips curved slightly, imagining the boat's gentle sway. The master's tone shifted, a subtle undercurrent of tension threading through his words. But Jiro had a flaw, one he kept hidden beneath his steady hands and warm smile. He was quick to anger, not the loud, bellowing kind, but a fire that smoldered in his chest, flaring when things went awry. A late passenger, a tangled net, a sudden storm, these could ignite his temper, turning his calm into a storm of sharp words and clenched fists. Jiro regretted these moments, but the fire was always there, waiting for a spark. The older man's brow twitched, as if Jiro's struggle echoed his own. The master's voice softened, guiding the travelers deeper. One evening, as the sun bled crimson into the horizon, Jiro rowed alone on the river. The day had been long, passengers had bickered, a merchant had spilled oil on his boat, and a child had nearly tipped them over. Jiro's patience was worn thin, his heart a tight knot. He sought the river's peace, hoping its flow would soothe him. The water was still, a mirror reflecting the first stars, and the moon was rising, its light a soft promise of calm. Jiro breathed deeply, his oars slicing through the silence, each stroke a step toward quiet. The The temple porch was hushed, the travelers' breaths syncing with the master's rhythm. The moon's glow seemed to pulse with the story. Then, the master said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Jiro saw it, a shadow on the water, another boat drifting toward him. It was moving fast, too fast, its bow cutting through the river like a blade. Jiro's eyes narrowed. "Who rows so carelessly?" he muttered, gripping his oars tighter. He called out, "Hey, watch your course." But the boat didn't slow, its path unwavering, aimed straight for his own. The young woman's fingers stilled, her breath catching. The master's voice grew taut, mirroring Jiro's rising tension. Jiro's anger flared, a spark catching dry tinder. "Turn aside," he shouted, his voice echoing across the water. Still, the boat came closer, its silhouette sharp in the moonlight. Jiro's heart pounded, his hands trembling with rage. "You'll sink us both, you fool!" he roared, standing in his boat, ready to curse the reckless rower who dared disrupt his peace. The river, once his friend, now seemed to mock him, carrying this intruder into his path. The travelers leaned forward, caught in the story's grip. The master's voice shifted, a note of suspense threading through. As the boats drew near, Jiro braced for impact, his anger a fire consuming all reason. But just as they were about to collide, the moonlight revealed the truth. The other boat was empty. No rower, no passenger, no helm, only a hollow vessel, adrift on the current. It bumped against Jiro's boat with a soft thud, rocking gently before drifting past, carried away by the river's flow. The older man's eyes open, a flicker of realization crossing his face. The master's voice softened, like a breeze calming a storm. Jiro stood frozen, his oars limp in his hands. The fire in his chest sputtered, then faded. He stared at the empty boat, its shadow dissolving into the water. His anger, so fierce moments before, now seemed foolish, a storm raging against nothing. He sank back into his seat, the river's quiet returning, the moon's light steady and unjudging. "An empty boat," he whispered, his voice raw. All this for an empty boat. The travelers' breaths deepened, their bodies sinking into the cushions. The master's voice was a gentle tide, pulling them toward reflection. That night, Jiro didn't row back to the village. He let his boat drift, the current guiding him as he sat in silence. The empty boat had struck him deeper than any collision. Why had he been so quick to rage? Why had he poured his heart's fire into something that held no intent, no malice? The river offered no answers, but its steady flow seemed to whisper, "Look deeper." Jiro closed his eyes, feeling the boat's gentle sway, the cool air on his skin, the moon's light on his face. For the first time, he saw his anger not as a force to fight, but as a shadow to understand. The moonlight bathed the temple in a serene glow, the travelers' faces soft and open. The master continued, his tone warm and inviting. The next day, Jiro sought out an old monk named Soren, who lived in a hut by the river's edge. Soren was a wanderer turned hermit, his life a tapestry of Zen wisdom woven from years of quiet observation. Jiro found him sitting on a flat stone, mending a fishing net, his hands moving with the grace of a dancer. "Master Soren," Jiro said, bowing low, "I need your help. Last night, I raged at an empty boat, mistaking it for an enemy. My anger consumes me, and I don't know how to let it go." Soren set down his net, his eyes meeting Jiro's with a clarity that pierced the soul. "Come," he said, rising. He led Jiro to the riverbank, where the water shimmered under the morning sun. "Sit," Soren instructed, pointing to a patch of grass. Jiro obeyed, his heart heavy with questions. Soren picked up a small stone and tossed it into the river, its ripples spreading outward. "Watch," he said. "The stone stirs the water, but the river does not fight it. The ripples come, and they go. So it is with your anger. It arises, but it need not rule you." The young woman's eyes fluttered closed, her breath slow and even. The master's voice was a soothing melody, guiding the travelers deeper. Soren knelt beside Jiro, he said, and spoke softly. "Your anger is like the empty boat. It seems real, it seems powerful, but it has no substance unless you give it one. When you saw the boat, you filled it with a story, a careless rower, an enemy, a threat, but the boat was empty, and so is your anger's cause. It is not the world that angers you, Jiro. It is the stories you tell yourself about the world." Jiro listened, the river's murmur, a quiet chorus to Soren's words. "How do I stop?" he asked. Soren smiled, his eyes crinkling. "You don't stop the ripples," he said. "You let them pass. When anger arises, feel it, the heat in your chest, the tightness in your hands. Don't fight it. Don't feed it with stories. Just watch it, like you watch the river. It will flow, and it will fade. This is the way of Zen, to see clearly, to hold lightly, to let be." The temple was still, the travelers' breaths a soft rhythm under the moon. The master's voice grew quieter, a whisper of wisdom. From that day, Jiro's life on the river changed. He still ferried passengers, still faced latecomers and stormy days, but his anger no longer ruled him. When frustration stirred, he paused, feeling its heat, watching it rise and fall like ripples on the water. He pictured the empty boat, a reminder that his rage was often aimed at shadows of his own making. The villagers noticed a new calm in him, a steadiness that drew them closer. Jiro's boat became a place of peace, his presence a balm for weary souls. The older man's face was serene, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The master's voice was now a lullaby, guiding the travelers toward rest. The Buddha taught, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." Jiro's story shows us that our rage, our frustration, our judgments, they are empty boats, drifting without intent. They seem to threaten us, but only because we fill them with stories. In Zen, we learn to see these boats for what they are, passing moments, not truths. When we let them drift by, we find peace, not in their absence, but in our freedom from their grip. He leaned back, his hands resting in his lap, the lantern's glow flickering softly. "Think of your own empty boats," he said, addressing the travelers. "What stirs your anger? A harsh word, a missed chance, a moment that didn't go as planned. Can you, like Jiro, see it as an empty vessel, free of malice, free of meaning unless you give it one?" As you listen, let these questions float through your mind, light as mist on the river. There's no need to chase them. Just let them be, and feel your heart soften, your breath deepen. The travelers were still, their bodies heavy against the mats, their minds cradled by the story's truth. The master's voice blended with the night sounds, the stream's song, the cricket's hum, the breeze's whisper. In Zen, We meet our anger with kindness, with curiosity, with space. He said. Jiro's empty boat was his teacher, showing him the way to freedom. So, 2. Can your moments of frustration guide you? If you let them pass without clinging, the river of your life flows on, and peace is found in its current, not in fighting its waves. He closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the story's wisdom. Tonight, as you rest under this moon, picture yourself in Jiro's boat, the river beneath you, the empty boat drifting by. Feel the water's gentle rock, the moonlight on your face, the quiet of the night holding you close. With each breath, let your anger slip away, like ripples fading into the river. You are not your anger, you are the river, vast and free. The young woman's face was calm, her breath a soft whisper. The older man's smile deepened, his body relaxed in the moon's embrace. The master's voice was a faint thread, weaving through the night. As Soren taught, the empty boat holds no power unless you give it one. The Buddha said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Let go of the coal, let the boat drift, and find the peace that waits beyond. The story settled over the travelers like a silken veil, the image of the river lingering in their minds. The master's voice faded into a soothing hum, merging with the night sounds, the stream's murmur, the cricket's song, the distant bell's echo. Rest now, he murmured, and let the moon carry you into the next tale, where we will meet a farmer whose seed lay silent in the dark. For now, breathe deeply and let the empty boat remind you, peace is yours when you let the river flow. The full moon bathed the temple porch in a soft, silvery glow, its light weaving through the wooden beams and spilling over the travelers nestled on their cushions. The night air was cool, carrying the faint perfume of blooming jasmine and the gentle rustle of pine needles stirred by a mountain breeze. The distant murmur of a stream blended with the rhythmic chirping of crickets, punctuated by the occasional resonant chime of a temple bell. The travelers, lulled by the tale of Jiro and the empty boat, rested deeply, their breath slow and even. The young woman's face held a quiet peace, her hands folded gently in her lap, while the older man's eyes were closed, his once tense features now softened under the moon's tender caress. The Zen master, his silhouette framed by the flickering glow of a single lantern, sat with a serene presence, his robes flowing like a tranquil pool. His voice, warm and resonant as a low flute, began the next story, its cadence a soothing invitation to drift further into the night's embrace. Once, in a valley, cradled by these ancient hills, he began, there lived a farmer named Hana. She was a woman of the earth, her hands rough from years of tending soil, her heart attuned to the cycles of sun and rain. Hana's fields were her canvas, painted with rows of rice, patches of sweet potatoes, and clusters of herbs that scented the air. Each spring, she sowed her seeds with care, whispering hopes for a bountiful harvest. Each autumn, she reaped the fruits of her labor, her smile as bright as the golden sheaves she carried home. The villagers admired Hana, for her fields were fertile, her spirit generous, and her life a quiet hymn to the land. The travelers' eyes fluttered, drawn into the vision of Hana's fields stretching under a boundless sky. The master's voice painted the scene with vivid strokes. Hana was no stranger to hardship. He continued, she had weathered droughts, that cracked the earth, floods that swept away her crops, and winters that tested her resolve. Yet through it all, she remained steadfast, her faith in the land unshaken. But there was one thing that gnawed at her heart, a worry she kept hidden beneath her steady hands and warm laughter doubt. Hana doubted her seeds, especially when they lay silent in the soil, showing no sign of life. She wondered if her work was enough, if the earth would answer her call. The young woman's fingers twitched slightly, as if she felt Hana's unease. The master's tone grew softer, a gentle undercurrent of tension threading through his words. One spring, Hana received a gift from a traveling monk, a single seed, small and unremarkable, yet said to hold the promise of a rare flower, one that bloomed only once in a generation. The monk's eyes had sparkled as he placed it in her palm. "Plant this with care," he said, "and trust its time." Hana nodded, her heart swelling with hope. She chose the best corner of her field, where the soil was rich and the sunlight lingered longest. She dug a small hollow, nestled the seed within, and covered it with earth, her fingers trembling with anticipation. The older man's breath deepened, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the story. The master's voice carried a quiet urgency. Days passed, and Hana watched the spot with eager eyes. She watered it each morning, her bucket heavy in her hands, and checked it each evening, her shadow long in the fading light. But the seed remained silent. No sprout broke the soil. No green shoot reached for the sun. A week became 2, then 3, and Hana's hope began to fray. She knelt by the patch, her fingers brushing the earth, whispering, "Why won't you grow? Have I failed you?" The field was silent, the wind offering no answer, and doubt crept into her heart like a shadow. The temple porch was hushed, the travelers' breaths syncing with the master's cadence. The moon climbed higher, its light casting delicate patterns on the wooden floor. Hana's worry grew. The master said, until it was a weight she carried through her days. She began to doubt not just the seed, but herself. Had she planted it too deep, watered it too much, chosen the wrong spot? She dug gently around the seed, peering into the soil, but found only darkness. She asked her neighbors, who shrugged and said, "Some seeds don't grow." She visited the village elder, who advised patience but offered no certainty. Each night, as she lay in her small hut, the silence of the seed haunted her, a quiet rebuke to her faith. The young woman's eyes opened slightly, a flicker of empathy crossing her face. The master's voice shifted, a note of suspense weaving through. One evening, as the full moon rose, casting its glow over the valley, Hana could bear it no longer. She took her lantern and walked to the field, the light swaying in her hand. She knelt by the patch, her heart heavy, and spoke to the seed as if it could hear. "I've done all I can," she said, her voice breaking. "If you won't grow, I'll dig you up and try again." She reached for her trowel, ready to unearth the seed, when a soft voice stopped her. "Hana," it said, "why do you disturb the dark?" The travelers leaned forward, caught in the story's spell. The master's voice was warm, like a hearth in winter. Hana turned to see an old woman standing at the field's edge, her hair silver under the moonlight, her eyes bright with wisdom. It was Kyo, a hermit who lived in a cave high in the hills, known for her Zen teachings and her bond with the earth. Kyo stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the grass. "The seed is not silent," she said. "It is working, even now, in the darkness. Why do you doubt what you cannot see?" Hana's hands trembled, the trowel slipping to the ground. "But it's been weeks," she said. "Nothing has changed. I fear it's dead. Or I've failed it." Kyo knelt beside her, her presence calm as the moon. "Look at the earth," she said, her fingers brushing the soil. "It holds the seed in its embrace, giving it warmth, giving it time. The darkness is not failure, it is where life begins. The seed is gathering strength, its roots reaching deep, its heart preparing to rise. Trust the darkness, Hana. Trust the seed." The older man's lips parted, a faint sigh escaping. The master's voice was a soothing melody, guiding the travelers deeper. Kyo took Hana's hand, he said, and led her to a nearby tree, its branches heavy with spring blossoms. "This tree was once a seed," Kyo said. "It, too, lay in the dark, unseen, unproven. Yet it grew, because the earth held it, because time allowed it. Your seed is no different. Doubt is a cloud that hides the moon, but the moon is still there. Let go of your need to see and trust what is unfolding." Hana listened, the moonlight washing over her, the field quiet around them. She felt Kyo's words sink into her heart, loosening the knot of doubt. "How do I trust?" she asked. Kyo smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Breathe," she said. "Feel the earth beneath you, the air in your lungs, the seed in its cradle. Trust is not a thought, it is a letting go. Each day, tend the seed, but do not demand its proof. Let it be, and it will show you its truth." The temple was still, the travelers' breaths a soft rhythm under the moon. The master's voice grew quieter, a whisper of wisdom. From that night, Hana's days changed. She returned to the field, but not with worry. She watered the seed, not to force its growth, but to honor its journey. She walked her fields, not to check for signs, but to feel the earth's pulse. She slept soundly, not haunted by silence, but cradled by trust. And one morning, as the sun rose, she saw it a tiny green sprout, fragile yet fierce, pushing through the soil. Hana knelt, her eyes wet with joy, and whispered, "Thank you." The seed had grown, not because she forced it, but because she let it be. The young woman's face was serene, a faint smile blooming. The master's voice was now a lullaby, guiding the travelers toward rest. The flower that grew was unlike any other, a radiant blossom, its petals shimmering like moonlight. Its scent a song of the earth. The villagers came to see it, their voices hushed with awe. Hana shared its beauty, but she kept Kyo's lesson close. The seed had needed the darkness to grow, just as she had needed trust to wait. Her doubt, once a burden, became a teacher, showing her the power of faith in what cannot be seen. The master paused, his gaze sweeping over the travelers. The moon was high, its light a silent witness to the story's truth. The great Zen master Suzuki once taught, "In the darkness, the seed grows silently." Hana's story reminds us that growth often happens beyond our sight, in the quiet spaces we cannot control. In Zen, we learn to trust the unseen, to let go of our need for proof. The seed in the darkness is like the dreams in your heart, the hopes you hold, the changes you seek. They are working, even when you cannot see them, if you give them time and trust. He leaned back, his hands resting in his lap, the lantern's glow flickering softly. Think of your own seed, he said, addressing the travelers. What do you wait for? A dream that hasn't bloomed? A change that feels too slow? A part of yourself you doubt will grow? Can you, like Hannah, trust the darkness? Can you tend it with care, without demanding its proof? As you listen, let these questions drift through your mind, light as petals on the wind. There's no need to answer them. Just let them be, and feel your heart soften, your breath deepen. The travelers were still, their bodies heavy against the cushions, their minds cradled by the story's quiet wisdom. The master's voice blended with the night's sounds, the stream's song, the cricket's hum, the breeze's whisper. In Zen, we meet our doubts with patience, with trust, with space, he said. Hannah's seed was her teacher, showing her the way to faith. So, too, can your moments of uncertainty guide you, if you let them unfold without forcing? The earth of your life holds you, and growth is already underway. He closed his eyes briefly, as if honoring the story's lesson. Tonight, as you rest under this moon, picture yourself in Hannah's field, the soil warm beneath you, the seed silent in its cradle. Feel the earth's embrace, the moonlight's glow, the quiet of the night holding you close. With each breath, let your doubts slip away, like clouds passing over the moon. You are not your doubt, you are the field, vast and ready for growth. The young woman's smile deepened, her breath a soft whisper. The older man's face was calm, his body relaxed in the moon's embrace. The master's voice was a faint thread weaving through the night. As Kyo taught, the darkness is not failure, it is where life begins. The Buddha said, faith is the seed, practice is the rain, and wisdom is the flower. Trust the seed, trust the rain, and the flower will bloom in its time. The story settled over the travelers like a silken veil, the image of the sprouting seed lingering in their minds. The master's voice faded into a soothing hum, merging with the night's sounds, the stream's murmur, the cricket's song, the distant bell's echo. Rest now, he murmured, and let the moon carry you into the next tale, where we will meet a monk who mourned a falling leaf. For now, breathe deeply and let the seed remind you, growth is yours when you trust the unseen. A hush fell over the temple as the full moon climbed the sky, its glow spilling like molten silver across the weathered wooden porch. The night exhaled softly, weaving scents of damp moss and blooming lotus through the air, while a chorus of crickets pulsed in rhythm with the faint, crystalline chime of a wind bell dangling from the eaves. The travelers, cradled by cushions, were suspended in a delicate trance, their breaths whispering in harmony after the tale of Hannah's seed. The young woman's eyes shimmered with quiet curiosity, her fingers tracing the edge of her sleeve, while the older man's face, etched with the day's cares, softened into a fragile peace. The Zen master, his presence a still flame in the lantern's flicker, leaned forward, his robes whispering against the floor. His voice, rich as aged wine, unfurled the next story, its cadence a velvet thread pulling the listeners into a world of shadow and light. Imagine a valley, he began, where mist curls like a dragon's breath and the stars burn close enough to touch. In that valley, centuries ago, stood a monastery carved into the side of a cliff, its stone walls kissed by ivy, its halls alive with the echo of chants. Here lived a monk named Tenzin, a soul as tender as dawn, his heart a lantern lit by questions. Tenzin was no sage, not yet just a young man in saffron robes. His days spent sweeping courtyards, tending herbs, and sitting in meditation as the world turned. But what set Tenzin apart was his love for a single tree, an ancient maple that stood like a sentinel in the monastery's heart, its branches a canopy of dreams. The travelers' minds drifted, conjuring the monastery's stone arches and the maple's rustling leaves. The master's voice wove a tapestry of color and sound. Tenzin was a student of Zen, he said, guided by an old master named Koshin, whose laughter was a river and whose silence was a mountain. Koshin taught Tenzin to see the world as it was fleeting, fragile, fierce, but Tenzin's heart resisted. He loved too deeply, not with greed, but with a quiet ache. He loved the way the maple's leaves caught the sunrise, the way they whispered secrets in the wind, the way they held the sky like a lover's hand. To Tenzin, the tree was eternal, a fixed star in a world of change, and he could not bear the thought of its fading. The young woman's breath caught, her eyes tracing the moon's arc as if seeing Tenzin's tree. The master's tone dipped, a shadow of sorrow threading through his words. Autumn came, as it always does, with a blaze of fire. The maple transformed, its leaves a riot of gold and scarlet, each one a tiny sun against the cooling air. Tenzin would linger beneath it, his meditation mat a small island in a sea of fallen leaves, his gaze lost in their brilliance. But with each leaf that drifted down, a pang struck his chest. "Why must you fall?" he murmured, his fingers brushing the earth where they lay. The leaves were not just leaves, they were moments, memories, fragments of a beauty he feared would never return. The older man's eyelids fluttered, his breath slowing as the story's weight settled. The master's voice grew taut, like a bowstring drawn tight. One twilight, as the moon rose full and fierce, Tenzin sat beneath the maple, his heart a tangled knot. A single golden leaf clung to a branch, its edges trembling in the breeze, its glow a defiant spark in the gathering dusk. Tenzin watched it, his breath shallow, his hands clasped as if in prayer. "Stay," he whispered, his voice a plea to the wind, to the tree, to time itself. But the wind, heedless, tugged the leaf free. It spun, a fleeting comet in the moonlight, and landed softly at his feet, its gold dimming against the earth. The temple seemed to hold its breath, the traveler's eyes soft and distant. The master's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with Tenzin's grief. Tenzin reached for the leaf, cradling it in his palms. Its surface was cool, its veins a delicate map of a life now ended. Tears welled in his eyes, not for the leaf alone, but for all that slipped away: the laughter of his youth, the warmth of his mother's voice, the dreams he'd buried in the monastery's silence. "Why must beauty die?" he asked the night, his voice breaking. The maple stood silent, its branches swaying, the moon offering only its cold, unyielding light. The young woman's fingers tightened on her cushion, her heart echoing Tenzin's question. The master's voice shifted, a thread of hope weaving through the sorrow. The next dawn, Tenzin sought Koshin. He found the old master by a small pond, tossing pebbles into the water, each ripple a fleeting mandala. "Master," Tenzin said, bowing low, "I am lost. A leaf fell last night, and it tore my heart. I know Zen teaches impermanence, but I cannot accept it. Why must all I love fade? How do I live with this pain?" Koshin turned, his eyes meeting Tenzin's with a warmth that melted the morning chill. Koshin did not speak at once. He picked up a pebble, smooth and gray, and handed it to Tenzin. "Throw it," he said. Tenzin tossed it into the pond, watching the ripples spread and vanish. "Did the pebble die?" Koshin asked. Tenzin frowned. "No," he said. "It's still there, beneath the water." Koshin nodded. "And so it is with your leaf. It has not died. It has changed. Come, let me show you." He led Tenzin through the forest, down a path where the earth was soft and the air thick with the scent of decay and growth. The travelers' breaths deepened, their minds carried by the story's flow. The master's voice was a gentle tide, pulling them toward discovery. They reached a grove, he said, where the ground was a mosaic of fallen leaves, their colors muted but alive with purpose. At the center stood a young maple, its branches slender, its leaves a vibrant green. Koshin knelt, his fingers sifting through the soil. "These leaves," he said, "fell years ago. They crumbled. They fed the earth. They gave life to the sapling. Your golden leaf is no different. It falls to make way for the next, to nourish what is to come. Its beauty is not lost. It is woven into the world." Tenzin knelt beside Koshin, his heart stirring. "But I miss it," he said, his voice soft. "I miss its gold, its light." Koshin's eyes twinkled. "Then carry its light here," he said, touching Tenzin's chest. "The leaf's beauty lives in you, in the joy it brought, in the lesson it offers. Clinging to it traps you in sorrow. Letting it go frees you to love again." He reached into his sleeve and drew out a small wooden box. Inside was a golden leaf, preserved in resin, its glow eternal. "I keep this," Koshin said, "not to hold it, but to remember its moment. Your leaf is yours to release, Tenzin, so you may hold the next." The older man's lips curved faintly, a sigh of release escaping. The master's voice was a soothing melody, guiding the travelers deeper. Koshin stood, his gaze sweeping the grove. "Impermanence is the heartbeat of life," he said. "The leaf falls, the flower fades, the river flows. You mourn the leaf because you love it, but love does not need to cling. Love can let go. Trusting the cycle will bring new beauty. In Zen, we embrace change, not as loss, but as renewal. The golden leaf is not gone. It is becoming, always becoming." Tenzin listened, the grove's quiet wrapping around him, the sapling's leaves rustling in the breeze. He felt Koshin's words untangle the knot in his heart, like a river smoothing a stone. "How do I begin?" he asked. Koshin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Breathe," he said. "Feel the earth beneath you, the air in your lungs, the leaf in your memory. Let it fall, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. Each moment is a leaf. Tenzin. Love it, then let it go, and the next will come." The temple was a cocoon of stillness, the travelers' breaths a soft pulse under the moon. The master's voice grew quieter, a whisper of truth. From that moment, Tenzin's days in the monastery transformed. He returned to the courtyard, but not to mourn. He sat beneath the maple, watching its leaves fall like golden sparks, each one a fleeting gift, each fall a promise of spring. He swept the paths, not to preserve them, but to honor their change. He meditated, not to escape time, but to dance with it. The monks saw a new radiance in him, a lightness that drew them near, as if Tenzin carried the maple's glow within. The young woman's face was alight, her breath a gentle wave. The master's voice was a lullaby, guiding the travelers toward rest. The maple continued its cycles, its leaves falling each autumn, its branches budding each spring. Tenzin grew older, his steps slower, his eyes deeper, but his heart remained open, a vessel for the world's fleeting beauty. He became a teacher, sharing the lesson of the golden leaf with those who came to the monastery, their hearts heavy with their own clinging. The courtyard became a sanctuary where seekers sat beneath the maple, watching its leaves drift, learning to love without holding. The master paused, his eyes tracing the moon's path. The night was a canvas of stars, the temple a haven of peace. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one turns away from suffering. Tenzin's golden leaf was his guide, showing him that impermanence is not a wound, but a wing. It lifts us, if we let it, into a life of freedom, where we love deeply yet hold lightly, where we cherish moments yet trust their passing. The leaf's fall is not an end, it is a beginning, a thread in the endless weave of existence. He leaned forward, his voice a gentle summons. "What is your golden leaf?" he asked, his words embracing the travelers. "A moment you fear losing, a love you hold too tightly, a dream you cannot release. Can you pray? Like Tenzin, let it fall, trusting its beauty will live on. Picture it now, glowing in your hands, then drifting away, carried by the wind. Feel the lightness in your heart, the space it leaves for new leaves, new moments, new life. There's no need to grasp, just breathe and let the world turn." The travelers were a constellation of stillness, their bodies soft against the cushions, their minds cradled by the story's wisdom. The master's voice wove through the night's sounds, the stream's lullaby, the cricket's chant, the bell's distant call. "In Zen, we meet change with a lover's heart," he said. Tenzin's leaf taught him to see beauty in the fleeting, to find peace in the flow. Your own leaves, your own moments, they are teachers too, if you let them fall. The cycle of life is a dance, and you are its dancer, moving with grace through the seasons. He closed his eyes, his breath a silent prayer. Under this moon, imagine Tenzin's courtyard, the maple's branches swaying, a golden leaf spiraling down. Feel the earth beneath you, the night's embrace, the moon's light kissing your skin. With each breath, release what you hold, like leaves scattering in the wind. You are not the leaf, you are the sky, vast and boundless, holding all things in your heart. The young woman's breath was a whisper, her face a canvas of peace. The older man's faint smile deepened, his body melting into the cushions. The master's voice was a silken thread, threading through the night. As Koshin taught, the leaf's fall is its song. The Buddha said, the secret of health for both mind and body is to live in the present moment wisely and earnestly. Let the leaf sing, let it fall, and find the peace that blooms in its wake. The story draped over the travelers like a starlit shawl, the image of the golden leaf drifting in their dreams. The master's voice softened to a murmur, blending with the night's symphony, the stream's flow, the cricket's hum, the bell's echo. Drift now, he whispered, into the next tale, where a carpenter finds beauty in the grain of rough wood. For now, breathe deeply and let the golden leaf carry you. Peace is yours in the dance of letting go. Me. The night unfurled like a scroll of black silk, the full moon a pearl stitched into its folds, casting a luminous veil over the temple's sloping roof. A breeze, soft as a sigh, carried the tang of cedar and the faint hum of a bamboo flute played by some unseen wanderer in the valley below. Fireflies winked like scattered embers, their glow mingling with the lantern's amber flicker, which danced across the faces of the travelers sprawled on woven mats. Their eyes were heavy, lulled by the tale of Tenzin's golden leaf, their breaths weaving a quiet tapestry with the chirps of night insects and the pulse of a distant waterfall. The young woman's fingers curled loosely around a blade of grass she'd plucked, her gaze lost in the stars, while the older man's head tilted back, his weathered face bathed in moonlight, a faint peace softening his lines. The Zen master, a shadow carved from stillness, sat with hands cupped like a lotus, his voice a low, resonant hum that seemed to rise from the earth itself, summoning the next story with the weight of a whispered secret. Once upon a time, he began, in a village where the hills bowed to the sky, there lived a carpenter named Soma. His workshop was a cathedral of wood, its walls lined with planks that smelled of forest and time, its floor dusted with curls of cedar shavings. Soma was a master of his craft, his hands steady as stone, his eye sharp as a hawk's. He could coax a block of oak into a table that sang of strength, shape a willow branch into a chair that cradled like a mother's arms. The villagers revered him, for Soma's creations were not mere objects, they were stories. Each grain a verse, each knot a memory. The travelers' minds drifted, conjuring Soma's workshop, the scent of sawdust sharp in their noses. The master's voice was a brushstroke, painting the scene with vivid hues. Each day, he continued. Soma rose with the dawn, his apron tied, his tools gleaming. He worked with reverence, selecting only the finest wood, straight-grained, flawless, polished to a sheen. His tables graced the homes of merchants. His cabinets held the treasures of priests. His benches bore the weight of lovers whispering under cherry blossoms. Soma's life was one of precision, of beauty crafted from perfection, and he took pride in his work, believing it reflected the order of the world. The young woman's lips parted, her breath a soft echo of Soma's rhythm. The master's tone shifted, a ripple of unease threading through his words. Then one day, he said, a storm swept through the village, fierce as a dragon's roar. It tore roofs from houses, uprooted trees, and scattered Soma's carefully stacked wood like leaves in a gale. When the skies cleared, Soma surveyed his workshop, his heart sinking. His finest planks were splintered, his perfect beams cracked. All that remained was a gnarled, crooked log, washed up by the river, its surface knotted and twisted, its grain wild as a storm-tossed sea. Soma kicked it, muttering, useless, fit only for kindling. The older man's brow furrowed, his fingers twitching as if feeling the wood's rough grain. The master's voice grew taut, like a string plucked on a kodo. Soma tried to rebuild, scavenging what he could, but the village's need was urgent. The headman came, pleading for a new shrine to replace the one the storm had shattered. "We need your skill, Soma," he said. "The gods must have a home." Soma nodded, but despair gnawed at him. Without perfect wood, how could he craft something worthy? He stared at the crooked log, its knots glaring like mocking eyes, and felt his pride curdle into shame. "I cannot work with this," he thought, shoving it into a corner where it gathered dust like a forgotten dream. The temple's stillness deepened, the traveler's breaths a gentle pulse against the night's hum. The master's voice softened, a flicker of curiosity sparking within. Because of this, he said, Soma's days grew heavy. He worked with salvaged scraps, but his heart wasn't in it. His tools felt clumsy, his cuts uneven. The villagers noticed, their praise turning to murmurs. Soma's workshop, once a place of song, became a tomb of silence. He avoided the crooked log, its presence a reproach, a reminder of his limits. But one evening, as the full moon rose, casting its light through the workshop's open door, Soma paused. The log glowed faintly, its knots shimmering like stars in a turbulent sky. For the first time, he wondered, "What are you?" The young woman's eyes widened, her grass blade still in her hand. The master's voice took on a new weight, a call to discovery. Soma approached the log, his fingers tracing its twists, its scars, its stubborn grain. It was unlike any wood he'd known, not straight, not smooth, but alive with character, as if it held a story only he could hear. He closed his eyes, feeling its pulse, and a question stirred. What if I let you speak? He dragged the log to his workbench, lit a lantern, and began to work, not with his usual precision, but with a strange, open-hearted trust. He let the wood guide his chisel, let its knots shape his cuts, let its flaws become his map. The travelers leaned closer, their minds alight with Soma's daring. The master's voice was a river, flowing with purpose, hour by hour, under the moon's watchful eye. Soma carved. The log resisted, its grain fighting his blade. But Soma didn't force it. He listened, adjusting his strokes, following its curves. Splinters flew, sweat beaded, and the workshop filled with the scent of fresh-cut wood. By dawn, the log was no longer a log. It was a shrine. Unlike any Soma had made, its lines were uneven, its surface textured with knots, yet it radiated a raw, wild beauty, as if the storm itself had been carved into its form. The older man's breath hitched, a faint smile breaking through. The master's voice swelled, a crescendo of revelation. When the villagers saw the shrine, they fell silent. It was not the polished perfection they expected, but something deeper, a vessel that held the valley's spirit, its struggles, its strength. The headman wept, saying, "This is no shrine for gods, it is a god itself." The villagers carried it to the hilltop, where it stood under the open sky, its knots catching the sunlight, its grain singing of resilience. Soma watched, his heart full, his pride no longer a chain, but a bridge to something greater. The temple was a sanctuary of quiet, the traveler's breaths a soft weave with the night's song. The master's voice softened, a reflection unfolding. Until finally, he said, Soma's workshop came alive again. He sought out crooked wood-gnarled branches, scarred planks, twisted roots, and crafted them into tables, chairs, flutes that sang with the wind's voice. The villagers marveled, not at perfection, but at truth. Soma's creations were no longer just objects. They were mirrors, reflecting the beauty of what is, not what should be. He became a teacher, showing others to see value in the flawed, to craft with heart, to trust the grain of life. The young woman's grass blade slipped from her fingers, her face serene. The master's voice was a whisper, a thread of wisdom spun from starlight. The great poet Rumi once said, Beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Soma's crooked wood was his field, a place where perfection gave way to presence. In Zen, we learn to see the beauty in what is, not what we wish it to be. The knots in the wood, the scars in our lives, they are not flaws, but stories, waiting to be told. Soma's shrine was not perfect, but it was whole, and so are you, in all your twists and turns. He leaned back, his hands open like wings. The lantern's glow, a quiet halo. "What is your crooked wood?" he asked, his voice a gentle tide washing over the travelers. "A part of yourself you deem unworthy, a moment you call failure, a path that feels wrong. Imagine it now, rough and knotted, glowing under the moon. Can you, like Soma, let it guide you? Can you carve it with trust, not force, and see what beauty emerges? Let these thoughts drift, soft as fireflies, lighting your heart without binding it." The travelers were a constellation of calm, their bodies melting into the mats, their minds cradled by the story's truth. The master's voice merged with the night's pulse, the waterfall's hum, the flute's distant wail, the firefly's flicker. "In Zen, we embrace the imperfect," he said, "for it is the imperfect that speaks." Soma's wood taught him to see with new eyes, to craft with an open heart. Your own flaws, your own knots, they are teachers too. If you listen to their grain, life is not a straight plank, it is a crooked log, and its beauty lies in its bends. He tilted his head, as if catching a star's whisper. "Beneath this moon, step into Soma's workshop, the air thick with cedar, the crooked wood warm under your hands. Feel its pulse, its story, its truth. With each breath, let your judgments fade, like shavings swept from the floor. You are not the wood, you are the carpenter, shaping life's grain into something whole." The young woman's breath was a feather, her face a canvas of peace. The older man's smile was a quiet bloom, his body soft in the moonlight's embrace. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's weave. As Soma learned, beauty is not in the straightness of the grain, but in its truth. The Buddha taught, "With our thoughts, we make the world." Carve your world with trust and find the peace that lies in its knots. The story settled like dew on the travelers' hearts, the image of the crooked shrine, a beacon in their dreams. The master's voice dissolved into a murmur, blending with the night's chorus, the waterfall's chant, the flute's echo, the firefly's glow. "Float now," he whispered, toward a tale of a traveler and a flickering flame. "For now, breathe deeply and let the crooked wood guide you. Peace is yours in the grain of what is." The night was a tapestry of whispers, its threads woven from the hum of 1,000 unseen wings and the sigh of clouds brushing the moon's pale cheek. Beneath the temple's sloping eaves, shadows danced like ink spilled on water, their edges softened by the glow of a single brazier, its embers pulsing like a dying heart. The air tasted of rain-soaked earth and the faint, bitter tang of charcoal, while a lone owl's call sliced through the drone of cicadas. The travelers, draped across reed mats, were half lost in the afterglow of Soma's crooked wood, their breaths a fragile rhythm against the night's pulse. The young woman's hair spilled like a dark river over her shoulder, her eyes catching the brazier's flicker, while the older man's hands lay open, palms up, as if cradling a dream. The Zen master, a silhouette etched in starlight, perched on a low stool. His presence, a quiet thunder. His voice, raw and resonant as a struck bell, cracked the silence, summoning a story that felt like a memory stolen from the moon itself. A wanderer named Lila moved through a world of ash and mist, her boots sinking into mud that clung like regret. She was no hero, no sage, just a woman with a tattered cloak and a heart stitched with questions. And she carried a lantern, its flame a trembling spark, the only light in a land where night had swallowed the stars. Lila had walked for years, or perhaps lifetimes, seeking a place where the darkness ended, where her flame could burn steady. Villages had turned her away, their gates barred, their eyes cold. Forests had clawed at her, their roots tripping her steps. Yet she walked, because the lantern was her vow, a promise made to a mother whose face she could no longer recall. Keep the light alive. The traveler's mind spiraled into Lila's world, her lantern a beacon in their inner dark. The master's voice was a thread of smoke, curling through time. Lila's days were a litany of survival. She'd shield the lantern from rain, its glass streaked with soot, its wick fraying like her hope. She'd scavenge twigs for fuel, her fingers bleeding from thorns, and she'd whisper to the flame, "Don't leave me," as if it could hear. But the darkness was relentless, a tide that pressed closer each night. Its weight a question. Why do you fight? Lila had no answer. Only the lantern's flicker, a pulse against the void. The young woman's breath quickened, her fingers brushing her mat as if seeking Lila's light. The master's tone shifted, a jagged edge of tension. But one night, under a moonless sky, the lantern's flame began to fade. Lila knelt in a clearing, the mud cold against her knees, her hands trembling as she adjusted the wick. The flame sputtered, a frail thread of gold, its glow barely reaching her face. "No," she hissed, her voice a blade. She poured the last of her oil, but the flame shrank, its light a whisper against the dark. Panic clawed her chest. Without the flame, she was nothing. No vow, no purpose, no path. She stood, shouting into the void. "Why do you fail me?" The darkness swallowed her words, and the flame flickered. One breath from extinction, the older man's eyes fluttered open, his gaze fixed on the brazier's embers. The master's voice wove past and present, a tapestry of memory. Lila's mind raced, dragging her back to a night years before, when her mother had pressed the lantern into her hands. "This is your heart," she'd said, her voice thin as frost. "Guard it, but don't cage it." Lila hadn't understood. Not then. She'd taken the lantern and run, fleeing a village consumed by fire, her mother's shadow lost in the smoke. The flame had burned bright that night, a defiant roar against the chaos. But now, in this clearing, it was dying, and Lila felt her heart dying with it. She sank to the ground, the lantern cradled in her lap, its glass warm against her skin. "I've failed you," she whispered, tears carving tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. The temple's brazier crackled, a spark leaping into the air. The master's voice was a pulse, urgent yet tender. Because of this, Lila's world narrowed to the flame's frail glow. She could let it die, let the darkness claim her, and rest at last. Or she could fight, though she had nothing left, no oil, no strength, no hope. But as she stared into the flame, a memory stirred, not of her mother, but of a stranger she'd met years ago. An old woman by a river, her eyes like polished stones. "The light you seek," the woman had said, "is not in the flame, but in you." Lila had scoffed, her lantern blazing then, its light a shield. Now, with the flame fading, those words echoed, a riddle she couldn't unravel. The travelers' breaths were a quiet tide, their minds tethered to Lila's struggle. The master's voice softened, a spark igniting within. Lila closed her eyes, the lantern's warmth a faint pulse against her chest. She breathed, slow and deep, feeling the mud beneath her, the air sharp in her lungs, the darkness a weight that was not her enemy but her cradle. The old woman's words returned, "The light is in you." Lila opened her eyes, and for the first time, she saw the flame not as a thing to guard, but as a mirror. It flickered because she flickered, dimmed because she dimmed. "You're me," she whispered, her voice a revelation. She set the lantern down, its glass catching the faint glow of a star breaking through the clouds. The young woman's hand stilled, her breath a soft echo of Lila's awakening. The master's voice was a river, flowing toward truth. Lila stood, the lantern at her feet, its flame a fragile thread. She didn't touch it, didn't shield it. Instead, she faced the darkness, her hands open, her heart unguarded. "I am enough," she said, the words a spark in her chest. The flame flared, a sudden bloom of gold, its light spilling across the clearing, pushing back the dark. Lila laughed, a sound raw and free, not because the flame had grown, but because she had. The light was not in the lantern, it was in her seeing, her being, her trust. The darkness was not her foe, it was her canvas, where her light could paint. The older man's lips curved, a sigh of release escaping. The master's voice wove a new thread, bright with possibility. The flame held steady, its glow a quiet hymn. Lila walked on, the lantern lighter in her hands, its light no longer her burden, but her companion. She passed through villages, their gates open now, their eyes warm. She crossed forests, their roots no longer snares but guides. And she whispered to the flame, not with fear, but with gratitude, "We're enough." The darkness still came, as it always would. But Lila no longer fought it. She walked with it, her light a steady pulse, her heart a lantern that needed no oil. The temple's embers glowed, their warmth a quiet embrace. The master's voice was a whisper, a seed planted in the traveler's dreams. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, "A candle does not need to burn forever to shine." Lila's fading flame was her teacher, showing her that light is not a thing to hoard, but a truth to embody. In Zen, we learn to shine not by fighting the dark, but by being present within it. The darkness is not absence, it is potential, waiting for your spark. Lila's lantern was her heart, and so is yours, glowing even when you cannot see it. The master leaned forward, his eyes catching the brazier's glow. "Picture your own fading flame," he said, his voice a gentle summons. "What light do you fear losing? A hope that flickers, a strength that wanes, a part of yourself you think too dim. See it now, trembling in your hands, its glow faint but fierce. Can you, like Lila, set it down, trusting your own light to shine? Let these thoughts swirl, soft as ash in the wind, warming your heart without weighing it. You are the flame, and the darkness is your home." The travelers were a quiet sea, their bodies soft against the mats, their minds alight with Lila's spark. The master's voice melted into the night's hum, the the cicadas drone, the owls call, the braziers crackle. Zen is the art of shining, he said, where every shadow is a canvas, every flicker a song. Lila's flame taught her to be, not to fight. Your own darkness, your own doubts, they are teachers, too. If you meet them with open hands, your heart is a lantern, burning bright in the night of your life. He tilted his head, as if listening to the moon's secrets. Step into Lila's clearing. The mud cool beneath you. The lantern's glow, a pulse in your chest. Feel the darkness, not as fear, but as possibility. With each breath, let your need for control drift away, like embers rising to the stars. You are not the flame, you are the light, boundless and eternal. The young woman's eyes closed, her breath a wisp of starlight. The older man's hands relaxed, his face a quiet flame. The master's voice was a murmur, threading through the night's weave. As Lila learned, the light is not in the lantern, it is in you. The Buddha taught, be a lamp unto yourself. Shine, not by holding tight, but by letting go, and find the peace that burns within. The story settled like embers in the travelers' hearts. Lila's lantern aglow in their dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum, blending with the night's chorus, the cicadas chant, the owl's cry, the brazier's pulse. Wander now, he whispered, into a tale of a fisherman and a river's song. For now, breathe deeply and let Lila's flame light your way. Peace is yours in the glow of your own heart. The night was a velvet shroud, pierced by the moon's cold fire, its light spilling like mercury across the temple's tiled roof. A wind, sharp as a blade's edge, hissed through the bamboo grove, carrying the scent of wet stone and the faint, musky breath of sleeping earth. Fireflies pulsed in the shadows, their glow a heartbeat against the drone of night frogs and the soft clatter of prayer flags flapping in the breeze. The travelers, sprawled on tatami mats, were adrift in the echo of Lila's fading flame. Their breaths a fragile counterpoint to the night's wild pulse. The young woman's fingers clutched a pebble, her eyes tracing the moon's halo, while the older man's head rested on folded arms, his face a map of quiet surrender. The Zen master, a wraith in moonlight, crouched by a low brazier, its coals glowing like forgotten stars. His voice, rough as river gravel, yet soft as mist, broke the silence, conjuring a story that seemed to rise from the earth's own dreams. A fisherman named Kyle stood knee-deep in a river, its current a cold tongue licking his shins. The water was a mirror, shattered by moonlight, its shards glinting like broken promises. Kyle was no poet, no monk, just a man with a bamboo pole and a heart knotted with want. His net hung heavy with hope, cast each dawn into the river's depths, seeking silver fish to feed his village. The river was his life, its bends his map, its ripples his calendar. He knew its moods, the laughter of spring floods, the grumble of summer droughts, the sigh of autumn's chill. Yet Kale fished not for fish alone, but for something deeper, a fullness he couldn't name, a catch that would quiet the ache in his chest. The master's voice was a current, pulling the travelers into Kale's world. Dawn after dawn, Kale waded into the river, his pole a wand, his net a prayer. The village depended on him, their plates filled by his skill, their fires warmed by his trade. Children ran to greet him, their laughter a net of its own, catching his weary smile. But Kale's heart was a restless tide. He wanted more, not wealth, not fame, but a catch to prove his worth. A haul so grand it would silence the whisper in his mind. You are not enough. Each empty net was a rebuke. Each meager catch a wound. He fished harder, longer, his eyes fixed on the water, blind to the river's beauty, deaf to its song. The young woman's pebble rolled in her palm, her breath quickening. The master's tone sharpened. A stone dropped into still water. Trouble came like a shadow, slow but sure. The river, once generous, grew stingy. Fish slipped through Kale's net, their scales a taunt. Days stretched into weeks, the village's stores dwindling, their eyes turning to Kale with questions he couldn't answer. He cast his net wider, waded deeper, his legs numb, his hands raw. Why do you hide them? He muttered to the river, his voice a blade. The water swirled, silent, its surface a mask. Kyle's hope frayed, his heart a clenched fist pounding against the river's indifference. The older man's fingers twitched, as if casting a net of his own. The master's voice wove memory into myth, a tapestry of struggle. Kale's nights were haunted by dreams of fish-silver bodies flashing, then vanishing, their eyes mocking. He remembered his father, a fisherman before him, whose nets always brimmed, whose laughter filled the village square. The river gives, his father had said, if you listen. Kyle had nodded. A boy then, his hands soft, his heart light. Now, with his father's pole in his hands, Kyle felt only failure. He stopped listening, stopped seeing. The river was no longer a friend, it was a foe, hoarding its treasures, testing his will. The temple's brazier flared, a spark spiraling into the dark. The master's voice surged, a wave cresting toward crisis. One dawn. As the moon lingered like a ghost, Kyle's patience snapped. He stood in the river, his net empty again, the village's hunger a weight on his shoulders. Rage boiled in his chest, a fire fed by weeks of want. Enough, he roared, hurling his pole into the water. It sank, a fleeting shadow, swallowed by the current. He tore his net, its fibers snapping like his hope, and flung it to the bank. You've taken everything, he shouted, his voice echoing off the hills. The river flowed on, unyielding, its ripples a quiet defiance. Kyle sank to his knees, the water soaking his chest, his anger spent, his heart a hollow drum. The travelers' breaths caught, their minds tethered to Kyle's despair. The master's voice softened, a tide receding. Kale knelt in the river, the cold seeping into his bones, the moon's light a faint caress. He was empty, empty of rage, empty of hope, empty of fight. The river's flow was a hum, low and steady, and for the first time in weeks, Kale heard it. Not the silence he'd cursed, but a song, soft, ancient, woven from water and stone. He closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him, its notes a balm. A memory flickered his father, waiting beside him, humming with the river, his net light in his hands. Listen, his father had said, and the river will teach you. The young woman's pebble stilled, her eyes half closed, lost in the river's song. The master's voice was a whisper, a spark in the dark. Kyle breathed, the river's chill a mirror to his heart. He stood, slow and deliberate, and waded to the bank, retrieving his torn net. He sat, his fingers tracing its frayed edges, not to mend it, but to feel its truth. The river sang on, its melody a question. What do you seek, Kale? Had no answer, but the question was enough. He looked at the water, not for fish, but for itself, the way it caught the moon, the way it moved without striving, the way it was enough. The older man's breath deepened, a faint peace settling. The master's voice wove a new thread, bright with awakening. Kale returned to the river, not as a hunter, but as a listener. He cast his net, not to trap, but to dance with the current. He held his pole, not to conquer, but to feel its weight. The fish came, or they didn't, and Kale let them be. He fished for the village, but also for the river, for its song, its flow, its quiet joy. The villagers noticed, their plates fuller, their hearts lighter. Kyle's laughter returned, not his father's, but his own, a note in the river's endless hymn. The temple's coals glowed, their warmth a quiet pulse. The master's voice was a ripple, spreading through the traveler's dreams. The Buddha taught, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. Kale's river was his path, teaching him to release the net of expectation, to find joy in the flow of now. In Zen, we learn to listen, not for what we want, but for what is. The river's song is your life, its currents, its silences, its fleeting gifts. Kyle's empty net was his teacher, showing him that fullness lies not in the catch, but in the casting. The master leaned back, his silhouette a brushstroke against the moon. Hear your own river, he said, his voice a soft current. What do you chase too fiercely? A dream that eludes you, a moment you demand, a self you think you must be. Picture it now, slipping through your net, glinting in the moonlight. Can you, like Kale, let it go? Listening instead to the song of this moment, let these thoughts flow. Light as ripples on water, stirring your heart without binding it. You are the river, and the song is yours. The travelers were a quiet tide, their bodies soft against the mats, their minds alight with Kale's melody. The master's voice dissolved into the night's hum, the frogs chant, the flags flutter, the coals pulse. Zen is the song you hear when you stop demanding, he said, where every ripple is a note, every silence a verse. Kale's river taught him to be, not to chase, your own wants, your own struggles. They are teachers, too. If you listen to their flow, your life is a river, singing through the night of your days. He gazed at the moon, as if borrowing its light, wade into Kale's river, the water cool against your skin. The moon's reflection, a fleeting gift. Feel the current, not as a foe, but as a friend. With each breath, let your striving drift away, like nets carried downstream. You are not the catch, you are the song, endless and alive. The young woman's pebble fell, her breath a note in the night's chorus. The older man's face was a quiet pool, his body soft in the moonlight's glow. The master's voice was a wisp, weaving through the night's tapestry. As Kale learned, the river's song is enough. The Buddha taught, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. Listen, not for the catch, but for the flow, and find the peace that sings within. The story shimmered like moonlight on water, Kyle's river a melody in the traveler's dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum, blending with the night's symphony. The frogs hum, the flags dance, the coals glow. Flow now, he whispered, toward a tale of a seeker in a mirrored lake. For now, breathe deeply, and let Kale's river carry you. Peace is yours in the song of this moment. The night was a cathedral of silence, its vaulted dome pierced by the moon's pale spear. casting a sheen like frost across the temple's mossy stones. A breeze, thin as a widow's veil, slipped through the cedar grove, carrying the scent of dew-kissed ferns and the faint resinous tang of smoldering incense. Moths fluttered in the glow of a single paper lantern, their wings a whisper against the hum of distant crickets and the soft plink of water dripping from the eaves. The travelers, curled on rice straw mats, were suspended in the afterglow of Kale's river song, their breaths a delicate thread woven with the night's pulse. The young woman's fingers traced the hem of her sleeve, her eyes lost in the lantern's flicker, while the older man's head rested on his arm, his face a quiet tide under the moon's gaze. The Zen master, a shadow spun from starlight, knelt by a low stone basin, its water trembling with reflected light. His voice, deep as a cavern's echo, yet soft as a falling petal, shattered the stillness, conjuring a story that seemed to ripple from the moon's own heart. Once upon a time, in a land where mountains kissed the clouds, there lived a seeker named Arya. She was a wisp of a woman, her eyes sharp as flint, her heart a compass pointed toward truth. Arya was no scholar, no saint, just a soul with a tattered satchel and a hunger for answers. She roamed valleys where rivers sang, forests where shadows danced, and peaks where the wind whispered secrets. Her quest was simple yet vast to find the truth, the spark that would light her path, the key to a life unshadowed by doubt. The world called her a dreamer, but Arya called herself a seeker, for she believed truth was a place, a destination she could reach if she walked far enough. The travelers' minds drifted, Arya's footsteps echoing in their dreams. The master's voice was a loom, weaving a tapestry of longing. Each day, Arya wandered, her satchel heavy with maps drawn by poets, riddles scrawled by sages, and fragments of songs sung by the mad. She climbed cliffs where eagles screamed, waded streams where pebbles gleamed, and slept under skies where stars burned like questions. She sought truth in the words of hermits, the chants of monks, the laughter of children. But each answer was a shadow, each truth a mirage. The hermits spoke of gods, the monks of emptiness, the children of joy, yet none filled the hollow in Arya's chest. She walked on, her heart a restless flame, her steps a prayer unanswered. The young woman's sleeve slipped, her breath a soft sigh. The master's tone shifted, a gust stirring still waters. Until one day, Arya came to a valley where the air was thick with mist, the ground soft with secrets. At its heart lay a lake, its surface a perfect mirror, reflecting the moon like a silver coin. The villagers called it the Mirrored Lake, a place of mystery, whispered to hold the truth of all things. Arya's heart leapt, her satchel forgotten, her maps discarded. Here, she thought, is where truth lives. She knelt by the lake, her reflection sharp in the moonlight, her eyes searching the water's depths. "Show me," she whispered, her voice a plea to the lake, to the moon, to the world itself. The older man's arm stirred, his face catching the lantern's glow. The master's voice wove dream into reality, a thread of tension. Because of this, Arya's life became the lake. She returned each dawn, her knees sinking into the damp earth, her eyes fixed on the water. She saw the moon's reflection, bright and whole, and thought, this is truth. But when clouds veiled the moon, the reflection vanished, and Arya's heart sank. She saw the stars, 1,000 sparks in the water, and thought, this is truth. But at dawn, the stars faded and doubt crept in. She saw her own face, sharp and searching, and thought, perhaps I am truth. But when the wind rippled the surface, her reflection shattered, and despair took root. The lake was a riddle, its answers fleeting, its silence a taunt. The travelers' breaths quickened, their minds tethered to Arya's quest. The master's voice was a pulse, urgent yet tender. Also because of this, Arya's days grew fevered. She stopped wandering, her satchel abandoned, her maps mildewed. She lived by the lake, her hair tangled, her hands stained with mud. She spoke to the water, begging for clarity. Why do you hide it? She cried, her voice echoing off the valley's walls. She scooped water in her hands, searching for truth in its weight, but it slipped through her fingers. She stared into the lake, seeking truth in its depths, but saw only darkness. Her heart, once a compass, became a stone, heavy with the fear that truth was a lie, a dream she'd chased in vain. The temple's lantern flickered, a moth's wing brushing its flame. The master's voice surged, a wave cresting toward revelation. One night, as the moon hung full and fierce, Arya's resolve broke. She stood by the lake, her reflection a ghost in the water, her hands clenched. Enough, she shouted, her voice a crack in the night. She waded into the lake, the water cold against her thighs, her arms thrashing as if to seize the moon's reflection. Give me truth, she screamed, diving beneath the surface, her hands grasping for the light. But the water was empty, its depths a void. She surfaced, gasping, her body trembling, her heart a hollow shell. She sank to the shore, the lake's silence a mirror to her own. The young woman's sleeve fell, her breath a quiet wave. The master's voice softened, a tide receding. Arya lay on the shore, the water lapping at her feet, the moon's light a gentle rebuke. She was empty, empty of questions, empty of fight, empty of need. The lake's surface stilled, its reflection clear, and for the first time, Arya looked not for truth, but at the world. She saw the moon, not as a prize, but as a presence, its light soft and whole. She saw the stars, not as answers, but as gifts, their glow a quiet joy. She saw her reflection, not as a puzzle, but as herself, weary yet alive. A voice stirred within, not the lake's, but her own truth is not out there, it is here. The older man's face softened, a faint smile blooming. The master's voice wove a new thread, luminous, with awakening. Arya sat up, her breath a prayer, her hands open to the night. She laughed, a sound raw and free, not because she'd found truth, but because she'd stopped searching. The lake was no riddle, it was a mirror, showing her what was always there: the moon, the stars, herself. She stood, the water dripping from her cloak, and walked back to the village, her satchel light, her heart full. She wandered again, not to seek, but to see the world's beauty, its pain, its endless flow. The villagers noticed, their eyes drawn to her quiet joy, her presence a spark in their weary days. The temple's incense curled, its smoke a wisp in the moonlight. The master's voice was a ripple, spreading through the traveler's dreams. The great Zen master Dogen taught, to study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. Arya's lake was her mirror, teaching her that truth is not a place, but a seeing. In Zen, we learn to look, not for what we lack, but for what is present. The moon's reflection is your life, its light, its shadows, its fleeting glow. Arya's search was her teacher, showing her that truth is here, now, in the heart that sees. The master leaned forward, his eyes catching the lantern's flame. "Gaze into your own lake," he said, his voice a soft tide. "What truth do you chase too fiercely? A certainty you crave, a self you think you must find. Picture it now, shimmering in the water, its edges soft in the moonlight. Can you, like Arya, stop grasping, seeing instead the light that is already yours? Let these thoughts drift, light as mist on the water, stirring your heart without chaining it. You are the lake, and the truth is your reflection." The travelers were a quiet sea, their bodies soft against the mats, their minds alight with Arya's mirror. The master's voice melted into the night's hum, the crickets drone, the waters plink, the lanterns glow. "Zen is the mirror you see when you stop seeking," he said, "where every ripple is a truth, every shadow a light." Arya's lake taught her to be, not to chase. Your own questions, your own longings, they are teachers, too, if you see them with open eyes. Your life is a lake, reflecting the moon of your heart. He gazed at the stars, as if borrowing their light. Swim in Arya's lake, the water cool against your skin, the moon's reflection a gentle gift. Feel the stillness, not as absence, but as fullness. With each breath, let your seeking drift away, like ripples fading into the night. You are not the truth, you are the seeing, boundless and alive. The young woman's sleeve rested, her breath a note in the night's chorus. The older man's smile was a quiet bloom, his body soft in the moonlight's glow. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's tapestry. As Arya learned, the lake's truth is enough. The Buddha taught, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? See, not with need, but with wonder, and find the peace that shines within. The story shimmered like starlight on water, Arya's lake a reflection in the traveler's dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum, blending with the night's symphony, the crickets hum, the waters drip, the lantern's pulse. "Glide now," he whispered, toward a tale of a monk and a cricket's hymn. "For now, breathe deeply and let Arya's lake hold you. Peace is yours in the mirror of this moment." The night was a living poem, its verses etched in the moon's ghostly radiance, a light that bled silver across the temple's crumbling stones. A wind, restless as a forgotten song, slithered through the bamboo, stirring scents of charcoal embers and the sharp green bite of crushed mint leaves. Fireflies wove a delicate lattice of stars, their glow pulsing against the low hum of a bamboo chime swaying under the eaves. The travelers, sprawled on silk cushions, were caught in the fading ripples of Coil's river song, their breaths a soft undercurrent to the night's wild cadence. May, the young woman, twirled a lotus petal between her fingers, her eyes tracing the moon's jagged halo, while Taro, the older man, leaned against a pillar, his weathered face softened by starlight, his hands tracing the grain of the wood. The Zen master, a wraith carved from shadow, sat cross-legged on a woven mat, his presence a quiet storm, his voice raw as torn silk, yet warm as a hearth's glow, sliced through the silence, spinning a tale that seemed to bloom from the night's own heart. Once, in a village where the hills cradled the sky, there lived a weaver named Soren. He was a man of threads and dreams. his fingers nimble as sparrows, his heart a loom weaving beauty from chaos. Soren was no king, no sage, just a soul with a wooden loom and a hunger to create. His tapestries adorned the village temple, their colors a hymn of dawn and dusk, their patterns a map of the valley's soul. Villagers whispered of Soren's gift, how his threads caught the wind's laughter, the river's sigh, the moon's quiet ache. He wove for joy, for love, for the simple truth that a single thread could bind the world. The travelers' minds unfurled, Soren's loom a pulse in their dreams. The master's voice was a shuttle, threading through time. Soren's days were a dance of creation. Each morning, he sat at his loom, its frame creaking under his touch, his hands coaxing silk and wool into patterns that sang. He wove tapestries of spring blossoms, autumn fires, winter's frost, each one a prayer, each one a gift. The villagers brought him threads red from berries, blue from indigo, gold from saffron, and Soren wove them into stories. His loom a bridge between earth and sky, but Soren's heart was a restless sea, seeking a masterpiece, a tapestry so perfect it would hold eternity. Proving his craft was enough. May's lotus petals stilled, her breath a quiet echo. The master's tone shifted, a shadow creeping over the light. Then came the challenge, sharp as a snapped thread. One stormy night, lightning struck the village, its claws rending Soren's workshop. The roof caved, rain flooded, and his loom, his heart's twin, cracked. Its frame splintered, its shuttle lost in the mud. Soren stood in the wreckage, his hands trembling, his tapestries sodden rags. The villagers mourned, their temple bare, their hearts heavy. Rebuild, they urged. But Soren's eyes saw only ruin. "How can I weave without my loom?" he whispered, his voice a wound. The broken wood was a mirror, reflecting his fear. "You are not enough." Taro's fingers paused, his gaze catching the lantern's flicker. The master's voice wove past into present, a tapestry of despair. Soren's nights were haunted by ghosts of threads unspun. He remembered his mother, a weaver before him, whose tapestries had warmed the village through bitter winters. "Weave what is," she'd said, her hands steady, her smile a sun. Soren had watched, a boy then, his heart bright, his fingers clumsy. Now, with her loom in pieces, he felt her absence like a storm's echo. He tried to salvage it, binding the frame with rope, carving a new shuttle. But the loom groaned, its threads tangling, its patterns warped. The villagers' hope faded, their whispers turning to pity, and Soren's heart sank into silence. The temple's embers crackled, a spark leaping into the dark. The master's voice surged, a thread pulled taut. Soren wandered, his satchel heavy with broken tools, seeking a new loom. He climbed hills where weavers wove with golden spindles, crossed valleys where looms sang with steel. But each was too grand, too cold, too unlike his own. He returned, defeated, to the village, the broken loom a ghost in his workshop. One dawn, as the moon lingered, pale as a sigh, Soren sat among the ruins, his hands tracing the splintered wood. A memory stirred not of his mother, but of a wanderer he'd met years ago, an old man with eyes like polished jade. "Chaos is a thread," the man had said. "Weave it, and see." Soren had laughed, his loom whole then, his heart untested. Now, with nothing left, those words burned. May's petal fell, her eyes half closed, lost in Soren's struggle. The master's voice was a spark, igniting possibility. Soren knelt, the loom's fragments a puzzle under his fingers. He breathed, slow and deep, feeling the wood's grain, its scars, its quiet strength. The wanderer's words echoed weave chaos. Soren closed his eyes, his heart a loom unspooling doubt. What if the break was not a flaw, but a new thread? He gathered the splintered pieces, not to rebuild, but to reimagine. He carved, sanded, wove rope through cracks, letting the loom's wounds shape its form. It was crooked, uneven, alive, a creature reborn, not restored. The travelers' breaths quickened, their minds tethered to Soren's daring. The master's voice was a current, pulling toward triumph. Soren sat at the broken loom, his hands trembling, his satchel open. He drew threads, not the perfect silks of before, but scraps frayed wool, tangled hemp, dyed with mud and ash. He wove, not with his old precision, but with a wild, open-hearted trust. The loom groaned, its cracks singing, its threads knotting into patterns no eye had seen, swirls of storm, shards of lightning, the chaos of a night reborn, hour by hour, under the moon's gaze. Soren wove, his fingers bleeding, his heart soaring. By dusk, the tapestry was done, a riot of color and shadow, its beauty raw, its truth fierce. Taro's smile broke, faint but true, his hands soft against the pillar. The master's voice swelled, a crescendo of revelation. The villagers gathered, their breath stolen by the tapestry. It was not the polished hymn they'd known, but a howl, a prayer, a mirror of their own broken, beautiful lives. The head woman knelt, tears in her eyes, saying, "This is our storm, our strength, our soul." They hung it in the temple, its threads catching the dawn, its knots a hymn to resilience. Soren stood, his heart no longer a sea, but a sky, vast and open. His pride not in perfection, but in presence. The temple's incense curled, its smoke a wisp in the starlight. The master's voice was a thread, weaving through the traveler's dreams. The great Zen master Hakuin taught, not knowing how near the truth is, we seek it far away. Soren's broken loom was his truth, teaching him that harmony lies not in order, but in chaos embraced. In Zen, we weave with what is cracks, knots, storms, and find beauty in the tangle. The tapestry of your life is not perfect, but it is whole. Its threads, your joys, your pains, your now. Soren's loom was his heart, and so is yours, weaving chaos into peace. The master leaned forward, his eyes catching the lantern's glow. "Touch your own broken loom," he said, his voice a quiet flame. "What chaos do you fight? A dream that frays, a self you think too cracked, a moment you wish were whole. See it now, splintered under your hands, its threads tangled but alive. Can you, like Soren, weave it, trusting its knots to sing? Let these thoughts drift, soft as ash on the wind, warming your heart without binding it. You are the weaver, and the chaos is your thread." The travelers were a quiet tide, their bodies soft against the mats, their minds alight with Soren's tapestry. The master's voice dissolved into the night's hum, the crickets chant, the chimes echo, the embers pulse. "Zen is the tapestry you weave when you stop fighting," he said, "where every thread is a truth, every knot a song." Soren's loom taught him to create, not to control. Your own chaos, your own cracks, they are teachers, too. If you weave them with open hands, your life is a loom, spinning beauty through the night of your days. He gazed at the moon, as if threading its light. Step into Soren's workshop, the air thick with cedar, The looms creak, a quiet hymn. Feel the threads, not as flaws, but as stories. With each breath, let your need for order drift away, like shavings swept from the floor. You are not the tapestry, you are the weaving, endless and alive. May's petal lay forgotten, her breath a note in the night's chorus. Taro's smile was a quiet bloom, his body soft in the moonlight's glow. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's weave. As Soren learned, the broken loom is enough. The Buddha taught, in the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go. Weave, not with force, but with love, and find the peace that blooms within. The story shimmered like threads in moonlight. Soren's tapestry, a pattern in the traveler's dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum. Blending with the night's symphony, the crickets hum, the chimes pulse, the embers glow. Drift now, he whispered, into the quiet where all stories meet. For now, breathe deeply, and let Soren's loom hold you. Peace is yours in the weave of this moment. The night was a velvet abyss, its depths pricked by the moon's silver needle, stitching light across the temple's ancient tiles. A breeze, soft as a lover's whisper, slipped through the pine grove, carrying the scent of damp moss and the faint, acrid bite of ink drying on bamboo scrolls. Fireflies wove a constellation of fleeting stars, their glow trembling against the low drone of a temple gong, its echo fading into the chirp of night crickets and the rustle of leaves skittering across the courtyard. The travelers, draped over silk cushions, were suspended in the quiet wake of Soren's woven threads, their breaths a delicate pulse woven with the night's rhythm. May, the young woman, clutched a folded fan, its paper edge frayed, her gaze lost in the moon's milky glow, while Taro, the older man, leaned against a weathered post, his fingers tracing invisible lines in the air, his face a canvas of starlit calm. The Zen master, a silhouette etched in moonlight, perched on a low stone bench, his presence a quiet flame, his voice deep as a monsoon's hum, yet light as a falling leaf, pierced the silence, conjuring a tale that seemed to spill from the stars themselves. Once upon a time, in a village cradled by mist-shrouded hills, there lived a painter named Lin. She was a woman of hues and shadows, her hands stained with indigo and ochre, her heart a palette of dreams. Lin was no mystic, no hero, just a soul with a bamboo brush and a hunger to capture the world's fleeting beauty. Her paintings adorned the village shrine, their strokes a dance of dawn's blush, rivers gleam, and twilight's sigh. Villagers spoke of Lin's gift, how her canvases held the valley's breath, the wind's secrets, the moon's quiet longing. She painted for love, for truth, for the simple joy of seeing the world anew. The travelers' minds drifted, Lin's brushstrokes vivid in their dreams. The master's voice was a pigment, blending light and shadow. Each day, Lin rose with the sun, her studio a sanctuary of rice paper and ink, her brush a wand weaving magic. She painted cherry blossoms scattering in spring, herons gliding over summer streams, maple leaves burning in autumn's fire. Her work was sought by merchants, revered by priests, cherished by children who saw their dreams in her colors. But Lin's heart was a restless tide, yearning for a painting so perfect it would hold eternity, a masterpiece to prove her art was enough, to silence the whisper in her soul, "You are not enough." May's fan stilled, her breath a soft echo of Lin's longing. The master's tone shifted, a cloud passing over the moon. Then one day, a strange wind blew through the village, sharp and cold, carrying whispers of change. Lin woke to find her brush, her heart's twin, altered. Its bristles, once firm, had begun to fray, each stroke leaving streaks where clean lines should have been. She tried to paint, but her blossoms smudged, her herons blurred, her leaves bled into chaos. "What is this?" she muttered, her fingers trembling, her canvas a ruin. The villagers noticed, their praise turning to murmurs, their shrine's walls bare. Lin's heart sank, her pride a wound. My brush is failing, and so am I. Taro's fingers paused, his gaze catching the lantern's flicker. The master's voice wove memory into myth, a canvas of loss. Lin's nights were haunted by dreams of her mother, a painter before her, whose brushes danced like fireflies, whose canvases warmed the village through bitter winters. "Paint what you see," her mother had said, her hands steady, her smile a dawn. Lin had watched, a girl then, her heart bright, her fingers clumsy. Now, with her brush fraying, she felt her mother's absence like a storm's shadow. She tried to mend it, trimming the bristles, binding the handle. But the brush faltered, its strokes wild, its ink pooling like tears. The villagers' hope faded, their whispers heavy, and Lin's studio grew silent, a tomb of unmade art. The temple's embers crackled, a spark spiraling into the dark. The master's voice surged, a brushstroke of defiance. Because of this, Lin's world narrowed to the brush's fading bristles. She wandered, her satchel heavy with paints, seeking a new brush. She climbed peaks where artisans carved ivory, crossed rivers where craftsmen wove silk hairs, visited markets where brushes gleamed like gold. But each was too stiff, too soft, too unlike her own. She returned, defeated, to her studio, the frayed brush a ghost on her table. One dusk, as the moon rose, full and fierce, Lin sat among her ruined canvases, her hands tracing the brush's worn handle. A memory stirred, not of her mother, but of a blind monk she'd met years ago. His eyes milky, his voice a river. "The brush is not the painting," he'd said. "You are." Lin had nodded, her art whole then, her heart untested. Now, with her brush broken, those words burned. May's fan slipped, her eyes half closed, lost in Lin's struggle. The master's voice was a spark, igniting possibility. Lin knelt, the brush warm in her hands, its bristles soft as a sigh. She breathed, slow and deep, feeling the wood's grain, its scars, its quiet truth. The monk's words echoed, "You are the painting." Lin closed her eyes, her heart a canvas unspooling fear. What if the fray was not a flaw, but a new stroke? She stood, lit a lantern, and began to paint. Not with her old precision, but with a wild, open-hearted trust. She let the brush guide her, its frayed bristles scattering ink like stars, its streaks becoming rivers, its smudges clouds. The canvas was chaos, yet alive a storm of color, a hymn of imperfection. The travelers' breaths quickened, their minds tethered to Lin's daring. The master's voice was a tide, pulling toward triumph, hour by hour, under the moon's gaze. Lin painted. The brush faltered, its bristles shedding, but Lin didn't fight it. She danced with it, her hands a blur, her heart aflame. Splashes of ink became mountains, streaks of blue became skies. Smudges of red became blossoms falling in a dream. By dawn, the painting was done, a riot of form and shadow, its beauty raw, its truth fierce. It was not the masterpiece she'd sought, but something deeper, a mirror of the world's fleeting, fractured glory. Taro's smile broke, faint but true, his hand soft against the post. The master's voice swelled, a crescendo of revelation. The villagers gathered, their breath stolen by the painting. It was not the polished hymn they'd known, but a cry, a prayer, a reflection of their own broken, beautiful lives. The head woman wept, saying, "This is our valley, our storms, our dawn." They hung it in the shrine, its colors catching the light, its streaks a hymn to resilience. Lynn stood, her heart no longer a tide, but a sky, vast and open, her pride not in perfection, but in presence. The temple's incense curled, its smoke a wisp in the starlight. The master's voice was a ripple, spreading through the traveler's dreams. The great Zen master Basho taught, "Do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise. Seek what they sought." Lynn's vanishing brush was her truth, teaching her that beauty lies not in control, but in surrender. In Zen, we paint with what is phrase, streaks, chaos, and find harmony in the moment. The canvas of your life is not perfect, but it is whole. It strokes your joys, your pains, your now. Lynn's brush was her heart, and so is yours, painting the present with every breath. The master leaned forward, his eyes catching the lantern's flame. "Touch your own vanishing brush," he said, his voice a quiet tide. "What do you cling to too tightly? A vision of perfection, a self you think you must be, a moment you fear losing. See it now, frayed in your hands, its bristles soft with truth. Can you, like Lynn, paint with it, trusting its streaks to sing? Let these thoughts drift, light as petals on the wind, stirring your heart without chaining it. You are the painter, and the moment is your canvas." The travelers were a quiet sea, their bodies soft against the cushions, their minds alight with Lynn's strokes. The master's voice dissolved into the night's hum, the crickets drone, the gong's echo, the ember's pulse. "Zen is the painting you create when you stop striving," he said, "where every stroke is a truth, every smudge a song." Lynn's brush taught her to be, not to control, your own chaos, your own phrase. They are teachers, too. If you paint them with open hands, your life is a canvas, glowing through the night of your days. He gazed at the stars, as if borrowing their light. Step into Lynn's studio, the air thick with ink, the canvas alive with streaks. Feel the brush, not as a tool, but as a partner. With each breath, let your need for perfection drift away, like ink fading on water. You are not the painting, you are the painting, endless and alive. May's fan lay forgotten, her breath a note in the night's chorus. Taro's smile was a quiet bloom, his body soft in the moonlight's glow. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's weave. As Lynn learned, the vanishing brush is enough. The Buddha taught, the present moment is the only moment. Paint, not with force, but with presence, and find the peace that blooms within. The story shimmered like moonlight on canvas, Lynn's painting a vision in the traveler's dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum, blending with the night's symphony, the crickets hum, the gong's pulse, the ember's glow. "Drift now," he whispered, "into the quiet where all stories weave. For now, breathe deeply and let Lynn's brush guide you. Peace is yours in the stroke of this moment." The night was a tapestry of whispers, its threads woven from the moon's pale breath. spilling silver across the temple's weathered eaves. A breeze, sharp as a shard of glass, snaked through the cedar grove, carrying the scent of damp earth and the faint, smoky tang of extinguished candles. Fireflies pulsed like wayward stars, their glow a counterpoint to the low hum of a temple drum, its rhythm fading into the chirp of crickets and the soft clatter of bamboo against stone. The travelers, sprawled on woven mats, were adrift in the fading echoes of Lin's vanishing brush. Their breaths, a fragile melody, woven with the night's wild pulse. May, the young woman, clutched a small stone, its edges cool against her palm, her eyes tracing the moon's jagged halo, while Taro, the older man, leaned against a pillar, his fingers brushing the air as if ringing an unseen bell, his face a quiet pool under starlight. The Zen master, a shadow carved from moonlight, knelt by a low stone basin, its water trembling with reflected stars. His voice, rough as weathered stone, yet soft as a falling petal, cracked the silence, conjuring a tale that seemed to rise from the night's own heart. In a village cradled by hills where dawn kissed dusk, there lived a bell ringer named Kale. He was a man of sound and silence, his hands calloused from years of striking the temple gong, his heart a bell tuned to the valley's rhythm. Kyle was no poet, no monk, just a soul with a mallet and a vow to wake the village each dawn. His gong, a bronze disc etched with ancient prayers, hung in the temple courtyard, its voice a call to prayer, to work, to life. Villagers revered Kale's gift, how his strikes stirred the air, summoning dawn with a resonance that lingered like a dream. He rang for joy, for duty, for the simple truth that a single note could bind the world. The master's voice was a chime, ringing through the travelers' minds. Kale's days were a symphony of purpose. Each dawn, he climbed the temple steps, his mallet steady, his breath a quiet prayer. He struck the gong, its voice a golden wave, rolling over rice fields, waking farmers, monks, children. The sound was his offering, a thread tying the village to the sky. But Kale's heart was a restless echo, seeking a note so pure it would touch eternity, a sound to prove his life was enough. To silence the whisper in his soul, your voice is not enough. Each strike was a question, each ring a plea, unanswered by the dawn. May's stone rolled in her palm, her breath a soft sigh. The master's tone darkened, a shadow over the light. Trouble came like a crack in the earth, sudden and deep. One morning, as mist cloaked the valley, Kale struck the gong, but its voice faltered a dull thud. Not a chime, he struck again, harder, his mallet trembling. But the gong was silent, its bronze surface cold, unyielding. The village woke to quiet, their prayers unanswered, their hearts heavy. Kyle's chest tightened, his vow a weight. "Why have you failed me?" he whispered, his voice a wound. The gong's silence was a mirror, reflecting his fear, "You are not enough." Taro's fingers stilled, his gaze catching the lantern's flicker. The master's voice wove memory into myth, a tapestry of loss. Kale's nights were haunted by dreams of sound unmade. He remembered his grandfather, a bell ringer before him, whose strikes had called rain in droughts, peace in strife. The gong speaks, his grandfather had said, his hand steady, his smile a sun. Kyle had listened, a boy then, his heart bright, his mallet small. Now, with the gong mute, he felt his grandfather's absence like a storm shadow. He tried to mend it, polishing the bronze, tightening its frame. But the gong remained silent, its voice a ghost. The villagers' hope faded, their whispers heavy, and Kale's temple grew quiet, a tomb of unstruck notes. The temple's embers flared, a spark spiraling into the dark. The master's voice surged, a chime rising to crisis. Kale's despair peaked under a moonless sky. He stood in the courtyard, the gong looming like a judge, his mallet heavy in his hands. Rage boiled, a fire fed by days of silence. "Speak!" he roared, striking the gong with all his strength. The mallet cracked, the bronze shuddered, but no sound came. Kale fell to his knees, his vow shattered, his heart a hollow drum. "I've failed you," he whispered, tears carving tracks through the dust on his face. The courtyard was still, the village asleep, the silence ablaze in his chest. The travelers' breaths caught, their minds tethered to Kale's anguish. The master's voice softened, a tide receding. Kale knelt, the night cold against his skin. The gong's silence a mirror to his own. He was empty, empty of rage, empty of hope, empty of fight. The wind stirred, a faint hum rising from the valley, and for the first time, Kale heard it, not the gong's voice, but the world's, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of a stream, the sigh of sleeping earth, a song older than bronze, deeper than sound. A memory flickered his grandfather, standing silent in the courtyard, smiling at the dawn. "Listen," he'd said, "and the silence will teach you." May's stone slipped, her eyes half closed, lost in Kale's stillness. The master's voice was a spark, igniting awakening. Kale breathed, the wind's hum a pulse in his chest. He stood, slow and deliberate, and set the broken mallet aside. He touched the gong, its bronze cool, not to strike, but to feel its truth. The silence was not failure, it was presence, a canvas for the world's song. A voice stirred within, not the gong's, but his own. The sound is here. Kyle closed his eyes, letting the silence fill him. Its weight, a gift. He saw the village, not as a demand, but as a partner. Its life a chime he'd missed in his striving. The travelers' breaths deepened, their minds alight with Kale's revelation. The master's voice was a current, pulling toward peace. Kale returned to the temple, not as a ringer, but as a listener. He struck the gong no more, letting its silence speak. Each dawn, he stood in the courtyard, his hands open, his heart tuned to the valley's humbirds waking, footsteps stirring, prayers rising. The villagers noticed, their mornings softer, their hearts lighter. They began to listen, too, finding music in the quiet, joy in the pause. Kale's silence became their bell, a call to be, not to strive. His presence, once a note, was now a symphony, resonating through the village's days. The temple's incense curled, its smoke a wisp in the starlight. The master's voice was a ripple, spreading through the travelers' dreams. The great Zen master Dogen taught, "The sound of silence is the voice of the universe." Kale's silent gong was his truth, teaching him that stillness is not absence, but presence. In Zen, we listen, not for what we demand, but for what is silence, sound, the moment's breath. The chime of your life is not in striving, but in being. Its notes, your joys, your pains, your now. Kale's gong was his heart, and so is yours, ringing in the quiet of each breath. The master leaned forward, his eyes catching the lantern's flame. Hear your own silent gong, he said, his voice a quiet tide. What sound do you chase too fiercely? A certainty you crave, a self you think you must prove, a moment you demand must speak. Picture it now, mute under your hands, its silence soft with truth. Can you, like Kale, listen, trusting its quiet to sing? Let these thoughts drift, light as mist on the wind, stirring your heart without binding it. You are the ringer, and the silence is your song. The travelers were a quiet sea, their bodies soft against the mats, their minds alight with Kale's stillness. The master's voice melted into the night's hum, the crickets drone, the drums echo, the embers pulse. Zen is the silence you hear when you stop striving, he said, where every pause is a note, every quiet a chime. Kale's gong taught him to be, not to force, your own striving, your own silences, they are teachers, too. If you listen with open ears, your life is a gong, singing through the night of your days. He gazed at the stars, as if borrowing their quiet. Stand in Kale's courtyard, the air cool against your skin, the gong's silence a gentle gift. Feel the stillness, not as lack, but as fullness. With each breath, let your need for sound drift away, like leaves falling in the wind. You are not the chime, you are the silence, boundless and alive. May's stone lay forgotten, her breath a note in the night's chorus. Taro's fingers rested, his smile a quiet bloom, his body soft in the moonlight's glow. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's weave. As Kale learned, the silent gong is enough. The Buddha taught, in the stillness of the mind, the world is found. Listen, not with need, but with presence, and find the peace that hums within. The story shimmered like moonlight on bronze, Kyle's silence a melody in the traveler's dreams. The master's voice faded into a hum, blending with the night's symphony, the crickets hum, the drums pulse, the embers glow. Flow now, he whispered, into the quiet where all stories converge. For now, breathe deeply, and let Kale's gong hold you. Peace is yours in the silence of this moment. The temple stood like a sentinel in the heart of the night, its weathered stones cradling the moon's silver glow. A light that pulsed with the quiet wisdom of centuries. The air was a delicate weave of scents, pine resin, damp moss, and the faint, sweet breath of blooming orchids carried on a breeze that sighed through the cedar grove. A single bamboo chime swayed under the eaves, its soft clink mingling with the distant murmur of a mountain stream, the rhythmic hum of crickets, and the occasional hoot of an owl perched in the shadows. The travelers, nestled on silk cushions strewn across the temple's veranda, were no longer mere listeners, but pilgrims of the heart. Their breaths a gentle tide woven with the stories that had unfolded over hours. May, the young woman, sat with her hands open, her lotus petal, stone, and fan forgotten, her face a quiet canvas reflecting the stars. Taro, the older man, leaned against a wooden pillar, his fingers still, his eyes tracing the moon's arc, a faint smile softening the lines of his weathered face. The Zen master, a silhouette spun from moonlight and shadow, knelt by a low stone altar, its surface etched with ancient prayers. A single incense stick curling smoke into the night. His voice, warm as a hearth, yet soft as a falling leaf, rose like a melody, not to spin a new tale, but to gather the threads of 10 stories into a final, luminous reflection. A symphony of silence to guide the travelers into dreams. Beneath this moon, he began, we have journeyed together, you and I, across a landscape of the soul, where rivers sing, shadows dance, and broken things bloom. These 10 stories were not mere tales. They were mirrors, each reflecting a facet of your heart, a spark of truth you already carry. You walked with Taro, whose cracked jar watered wildflowers, teaching you that imperfections are gifts. You stood with Kale, whose shadow became a companion, showing you that fear is a friend when met with courage. You joined the villagers, whose stone carved a new path, revealing that obstacles are invitations to see anew. You waited with Jiro, whose empty boat quelled his rage, whispering that anger is a story you can release. You knelt with Hana, whose seed sprouted in darkness, proving that trust grows where doubt surrenders. You sat with Tenzin, whose golden leaf fell, urging you to love without clinging. You carved with Soma, whose crooked wood sang, demonstrating that beauty thrives in chaos. You wandered with Lila, whose fading flame lit her soul, affirming that light shines within you. You listened with Kale, whose river hummed a song of presence, reminding you to let go of expectations. And tonight, you painted with Lin, whose vanishing brush wove a masterpiece, teaching you that surrender is the art of the present moment. The travelers' breaths were a quiet current, their hearts open, their minds soft with the story's radiance. The master's voice was a stream, flowing through their dreams. Each story, he said, was a lantern, its glow a guide through the shadows of your mind. The cracked jar, the shadow, the stone, the boat, the seed, the leaf, the wood, the flame, the river, the brush. They are not distant truths, but pieces of you. They are your joys and sorrows, your doubts and hopes, your questions and silences. Zen is not a destination. It is a seeing, a being, a breathing in the moment you hold now. The Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. You have found this peace not by chasing it, but by listening, by feeling, by becoming the stories you've heard. The temple's silence deepened. The moon's light, a gentle caress. May's eyes shimmered, a tear tracing her cheek, not of sorrow, but of clarity, as if the stories had washed away a veil. Taro's smile widened, his hands resting in his lap, his heart a quiet lake reflecting the night. The master leaned forward, his voice a whisper of starlight. Look within, he said. What do you carry from these tales? A jar that leaks beauty, a shadow that walks beside you, a river that sings your name. Each story left a spark, a seed, a stroke of paint. They are not answers to hoard, but questions to live. What is your cracked jar, your silent gong, your vanishing brush? What imperfection can you embrace? What silence can you hear? What moment can you paint? Let these questions drift, not as weights, but as fireflies, lighting your heart without binding it. The breeze stirred, carrying the faint scent of rain, a promise of renewal. The master's voice was a quiet tide, pulling the travelers toward dreams. You came to this temple, he continued, perhaps seeking rest, perhaps seeking answers, perhaps seeking nothing at all. But you have found something greater yourself. The stories have shown you that peace is not a place, but a presence. It is in the jar's drip, the shadows dance, the rivers hum. It is in your breath, your heartbeat, your quiet now. The Zen master Hakuin taught, not knowing how near the truth is, we seek it far away. You have sought, and you have found, not by reaching, but by being, by opening your heart to the story's light. The temple's courtyard was a sanctuary, the moon's glow a blanket for the travelers' souls. The master's gaze swept the group, his eyes catching the fading embers of the incense. Each story was a thread, he said, woven into a tapestry of your becoming. Taro's wildflowers bloom in your imperfections. Kale's shadow walks with your courage. Jiro's boat sails through your calm. Hana's seed grows in your trust. Tenzin's leaf falls in your release. Soma's wood carves your chaos. Lila's flame burns in your heart. Kale's river flows in your presence. Lin's brush paints your now. And Kale's gong rings in your silence. Together, they form a symphony, not of sound, but of being, a melody you carry beyond this night. May's hands open fully, her face serene, her breath a quiet hymn. Taro's eyes closed, his smile a gentle wave, his body melting into the moonlight's embrace. The master's voice was a wisp, threading through the night's weave. As you lie here, he said, let the stories settle like dew on a lotus leaf, each one a gift, each one a truth. Picture the valley where Taro carried his jar, the meadow where Kale met his shadow, the river where Jiro found peace, the lake where Arya saw herself. See them not as places, but as moments, woven into the fabric of your heart. Feel the moon's light, not as a distant glow, but as your own, shining from within. You are the story, the seeker, the silence. You are enough. The temple's silence was a cradle, the moon's glow a vow of peace. The master leaned back, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes tracing the stars. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The truth of these stories is yours, not to clutch, but to live. As you drift into dreams, carry their light, not as a burden, but as a spark. Let it guide you through the night, through the dawn, through the moments yet to come. You have listened, you have felt, you have become. The stories are not ended, they live in you. In the breath you take, the step you make, the silence you embrace. The breeze grew softer, the bamboo chime falling silent, its echo a quiet farewell. The master's voice was a gentle current, guiding the travelers toward dreams. Imagine now, he said, a valley where all stories meet, a place where cracked jars bloom, shadows dance, rivers sing, and gongs hum in silence. Walk there, not with your feet, but with your heart. Feel the earth beneath you, the moonlight on your skin, the quiet of the night holding you close. Each story is a star, each lesson a light, and you are the sky, vast and boundless, holding them all. Sleep now, not to escape, but to enter this valley, where peace is not a dream, but a truth you already know. The travelers were a constellation of stillness, their bodies soft against the cushions, their minds adrift in the story's glow. The master's voice was a murmur, blending with the night's symphony, the stream's whisper, the cricket's chant, the breeze's sigh. Thank you, he whispered, for sharing this journey under the moon. You have woven a tapestry of presence, a symphony of silence. Dream deeply and wake with a heart as luminous as this night, as vast as this sky. Let the stories be your wings, carrying you through the quiet, through the light, through the endless now. The temple was a haven, the moon's light a promise of peace. May's breath was a quiet note, her face a canvas of dreams. Taro's smile lingered, his body a quiet wave in the moonlight's tide. The master closed his eyes, his breath a silent prayer, his presence a spark in the night's embrace. The stories settled like petals on a still pond, their light a guide through the traveler's dreams. The night held them close, its silence a symphony, its moon a vow of stories woven and complete as it spun them gently into the heart of sleep. Breathe now. The master's voice seemed to echo, a final whisper in the traveler's minds, and let the moon's silent symphony carry you. Peace is yours, now and always. In the stories you live, the truths you see, the quiet you become, the travelers drifted like stars on a boundless sea, the temple's stillness their cradle, the night their wings, as the moon sang them into dreams.